This is the story of a man betrayed in the cruelest way imaginable. She shattered his entire world, and now she will pay the price. In this world, newbies are less than dirt offered. No guidance, no help. Our main character was crushed by humiliation, rejected by every party for his weakness. But then, she appeared. A beacon of hope. She claimed to be alone, whispering that he was exactly who she was looking for. As they ventured beyond the city walls, her words were like honey. "You look like a true knight in that armor," she said. That one simple compliment was all it took. His mind raced with visions of their future. A first kiss, a proposal, a family. But when they reached a secluded clearing, her touch finally reached his heart. Quite literally with the sharp end of her staff. As his life faded, he choked out the words, asking why she'd do all this just for his gear. She sneered, explaining his loot was utter trash. She called him a pathetic beggar, wondering if his parents were paupers to afford such garbage. After shattering what was left of his pride, she delivered the final blow. "I'm sick of dealing with losers," she spat, and player killed him without a second thought. By slaughtering her 1,000th newbie player, the girl unlocked a hidden class. She became Chrono Life's very first goddess. Thrilled with her ascension, she vanished muttering about a new mission. But for the player she left behind, a devastating penalty awaited. He respawned in the city, stripped of half his experience, half his power. Haunted by the memory of being called weak, our protagonist Jiu decided to risk it all. He would gamble everything on upgrading his pathetic starter gear. First, the sword. He brought the hammer down, and it shattered into dust. Furious, he tried the gauntlet next. Another swing, another catastrophic failure. Swing after swing, Jiu destroyed every last piece of his equipment. Not a single item survived the enhancement process. His journey in this world was over. All he could do was weep in despair. But then, a simple twig fell at his feet. It was a starter item, worthless trash that players discard without a thought. Gazing at it, a dark, intrusive thought took hold. He swung the hammer. It worked. +1. He swung again. Success. +2. Infuriated by the cruel irony, Jiu vowed to smash this junk until it broke. He hammered away until his arm burned with exhaustion, landing one final strike. The damn stick had reached +99, the maximum enhancement level. His hands trembled in disbelief, and he accidentally dropped it. The moment the twig touched the ground, the system registered it as an attack. And then, a cataclysmic explosion rocked the entire world. A blast so powerful it carved a scar across the very planet. Staring at the absolute devastation, a storm of system notifications flooded his vision. He had shattered the world record for kills in a single blow. 850,617 players, annihilated. Accepting his newfound godlike power, Jiu's path became clear. He would unleash his vengeance on all who scorned him, especially that goddess. But Jiu was still dirt poor. He didn't even have the coin for a new set of clothes. As he walked, another player shoved past him, spewing threats. Jiu simply said, "You brought this on yourself," and tapped the ground with his stick. The player vanished in a flash of light, and an entire district of the city was erased from existence. The survivors nearby knew instantly who was responsible. Jiu felt a surge of confidence until a system alert stopped him cold. The twig's durability was now 3 out of 5, only 3 more strikes before his ultimate weapon turned to dust. He ducked into an alley, his mind racing. He held the power of a god, but could only unleash it 3 more times. Wasting it on petty PK revenge was foolish. This time he would be smart. He would use his remaining power to become a legend by slaying the world's most powerful boss. Arriving at the Valley of Death, a terrifying roar shook the mountains. Before him stood Urus, the 2-headed dragon, the final boss of Chrono Life. Urus unleashed its overwhelming aura, trying to intimidate the tiny human. But before the dragon could finish its threat, a single tap sent one of its heads flying. The beast froze in shock. Suddenly, it was very interested in negotiations. Jiu, however, wasn't in the mood to talk. With only 2 strikes left, he needed this over with fast to max out his level. Another tap. And the legendary dragon was left a broken mess on the floor. Jiu sighed, lamenting the imminent loss of his incredible weapon. But in that moment, the dying Urus saw an opportunity and offered him a proposal. Jiu, his patience worn thin, growled at the dragon to spit it out. Urus spoke of ego weapons. When a powerful soul merges with an item, it can create a legendary weapon, one with infinite durability. But of course, there was a catch. To unlock this power, Jiu would have to forge a pact with the dragon itself. By doing so, Urus could survive as a soul bound to the twig. Jiu didn't hesitate for a second. He accepted. Urus poured its soul into the stick. In a flash of light, the weapon was reborn. It was now an ego-class weapon with power unimaginable and durability eternal. At last, the path to revenge was wide open. Now he could unleash his full power without any limits. Meanwhile, back in the cities, the world was in an uproar. Wanted posters bearing Jiu's face were plastered across every kingdom. Dead or alive with a staggering reward of 1 billion gold. And just like that, the cavalry has arrived. Adventurer guilds from every corner of the kingdom mobilized to handle the crisis. The 5 mightiest guilds of Chrono Life have assembled their legendary leaders, united by a single terrifying mission to hunt the man who wiped out over 850,000 players in a single moment. He was a threat to their entire world, and he had to be stopped. To lead this new alliance, they chose the most revered warrior of all the Castle King Ardon Master of the Justice Guild. Under his piercing gaze, the World Union Guild was forged, and war was declared upon Jiu. But now, with a staff of infinite power in his hands, Jiu was ready to unleash his true potential. Then, while strolling through the capital, blissfully unaware, Jiu's world is suddenly turned upside down. A strange creature materializes from his staff, but its voice is familiar. It's Urus, the 2-headed dragon from their pact. Jiu can't help but think he looks incredibly cute now. Too bad only Jiu can see him. But this peaceful moment was a calm before a devastating storm. He picks up a piece of paper, wondering what it could be. It's his own face staring back from a wanted poster. The sight leaves him utterly speechless. He realizes there are tens of thousands of them plastered on every wall across the entire city. Urus, however, is practically bursting with excitement. He declares this is only natural for his Hyungnim, who took down 800,000 foes with one strike of feat not even he could dream of. Plus, that 1 billion gold bounty meant 1 billion in real-world cash, which was, as he put it, super fancy. Jiu wonders how an AI could even use slang like that without breaking the game's rules. Urus just scoffs, reminding him that he's already dead, so the rules don't exactly apply anymore. He then asks what his Hyungnim plans to do, since players from across the globe would be coming for his head. Perhaps, he suggests with a grin, they should just wipe out humanity for good. Gio glances aside, remembering the moment the staff fell, then looks back at the posters. He has to admit, this feeling isn't half bad. He feels like he's finally hit the big time. He announces that if this is how things are going to be, he'll just have to adopt the LHS style. A confused Urus asks him what in the world that means. The main character explains it's short for loser hiding strength, a classic archetype where an overpowered being pretends to be a total nobody. Urus questions, the logic arguing that humans would just dismiss him as a weakling. But Jiu grins, telling him he just doesn't get it. This is where the fun begins. Has Urus never seen a story like this before? To everyone else, he's just some loser. But in reality, he's the protagonist. And he's going to enjoy this fantasy life to its absolute fullest. But in that very instant, an arrow strikes him down. Urus watches in pure shock as Gio collapses, coughing up blood. His head hits the pavement while Urus circles above, frantically calling out to his Hyungnim. On a nearby rooftop, an archer named Hawkeye lowers his rare cyan-colored bow. With a quiver of matching arrows, he confirms the target is down. Below, his army charges towards Gio's fallen body, the troops of Arden Castle quickly surrounding him. Hawkeye's voice booms across the square. In the name of the Supreme Commander of the 5 Guilds Union, I order you to bind the monster who murdered 800,000 people. Throw him in the deepest dungeon. In response, the soldiers let out a deafening war cry, ready to carry out his command. Urus pleads desperately, Hyungnim, are you all right? Get up. These humans are weak, but you'll be in trouble if they all swarm you. And despite the arrow lodged in his chest, Jiu rises to his feet, facing the entire Ardon army alone. The soldiers cry out that the enemy is standing. Don't give him a second to recover, Hawkeye commands. Attack all at once. Urus calls out his name again, his voice filled with dread. But Jiu simply smirks, taking back everything he just said. He rips the arrow from his chest and casts it aside with utter disdain. Gripping his staff, he mutters that he just wanted to live a quiet life as a background character. But these fools, they brought this upon themselves. A colossal explosion of energy erupts from his body, engulfing the entire realm in light. With a single swing of his staff, he unleashes a power rivaling a nuclear blast. And in a flash, every last soldier falls lifelessly to the ground. Hawkeye chokes, having barely survived the onslaught. He can't comprehend what just happened. In a single horrifying instant, his entire army had been annihilated. He looks around in shock, realizing the capital of the First Realm had completely vanished. Then Jiu appears directly in front of him. Hawkeye can only stare, his face a mask of pure terror. As the protagonist closes in, the elf fumbles for a summoning orb, a relic capable of calling upon countless users. Hawkeye shatters the orb, and a brilliant magic circle ignites beneath him. As dozens more portals tear open the sky, he screams, "Answer my summons!" All members of the Union activate large-scale teleportation now. From every portal, tens of thousands of players begin to pour through, yet Jiu simply watches the spectacle completely unfazed. The newly summoned soldiers surround him, forming a staggering army of millions from the World Union. An army of 3 million souls gathered for a single purpose: to eliminate Jiu. Hawkeye raised his hand, his voice roaring across the field, "Attack!" As one, the warriors surged forward. Facing this human tide, Jiu merely let out a quiet sigh of boredom. He shifted his staff slightly, a single fluid motion, and an entire line of soldiers vanished, annihilated from existence in the blink of an eye. Urus watched, completely stunned. Gio swung the staff again, then thrust it forward, erasing another massive chunk of the army. The dragon Urus was in a state of pure disbelief. He remembered his earlier thought, That Jiu would be in trouble if they all charged at once. It was simple, undeniable logic. After all, no matter how powerful Urus himself was, even he couldn't face millions of opponents. The World Union was not to be underestimated. These were elite rankers from across the globe. Even Urus with his own army might have fallen against such a force. That was why he'd decided retreating was the only logical choice. But now, he saw how utterly and completely wrong he had been. Seizing an opening, a few elite soldiers lunged forward, their blades and spears aimed to kill. They soared towards Jiu, ready to pierce his heart. But the protagonist merely shifted his staff, annihilating them with a single touch. Another entire line of the army was split in half. In the rear, Abracadabra and her assistant mages were chanting, quickly weaving a powerful spell. Jiu sensed the surge of mana behind him. He turned his eyes, locking onto a massive magic circle materializing in the sky. Abracadabra unleashed an ancient enchantment of destruction, a spell meant to disintegrate him completely. A colossal beam of energy screamed towards him as the protagonist watched with a look of surprise. He thought to himself that the spell's name was actually pretty cool. He decided he should name his own techniques too. Then he swung his staff upwards. The attack tore through everything in its path, splitting the sky itself. Arise, he named it. The magic circle and the ancient spell were obliterated without a trace. Stunned Abracadabra could only whisper, "How did you shatter my ancient magic?" The royal sorcerers braced themselves for the next command, but before a single word was spoken, Jiu moved his staff once more. Attack me, he called this strike. It sliced through the air before him, sending the mages flying into oblivion. The result of 1 versus 3 million wasn't a battle. It was a complete disaster. The World Union Guild was utterly crushed. Hawkeye knelt on the blood-soaked ground, drenched in a cold sweat of pure terror. He kept muttering that it was impossible right up until Jiu appeared before him. The protagonist explained that he had intentionally spared him because, thanks to Hawkeye, he was finding it hard to control his strength. The elf demanded to know why he hadn't been killed. Jiu sighed, stating the reason was obvious. "You're the one who shot that arrow." Hawkeye's face went pale with panic just before the staff slammed into him. As expected, the events of that day became a legend, a story told not just among Chrono Life users, but by players of every game, and even those who had never touched one. And through it all, the simple staff remained perfectly intact as Jiu analyzed it, finishing off the elf. Urus exclaimed that the item was truly incredible. The protagonist simply noted he'd been wondering where the dragon had disappeared to. Suddenly, a presence approached from behind. The protagonist turned and came face to face with a young woman. He wondered if there was still someone left. What a pain, he thought, until he recognized her familiar figure. The two of them stood frozen, staring at each other across the silent battlefield. But the goddess of life just looked at him. A burning anger began to swell inside Jiu as he realized who she was, a reunion no one could have ever predicted. The goddess of life smiled. "It's been a long time, Mr. Ho." The scene was a vast plain at sunset, littered with 3 million bodies and countless broken weapons. And in the middle of this carnage, Jiu's fated reunion with the goddess of life. He couldn't help but think the whole setup was incredibly dramatic. He remembered her words calling his parents beggars. His hand trembled with a barely contained rage. He wasn't sure if it was the sheer contrast to his earlier calm, but a dark laugh escaped his lips. The goddess simply asked how he'd been. She commented that it must be destiny that she never expected they would meet again. Jiu scoffed. "Nonsense! The moment I saw you, I knew someone truly terrible was looking for me." The goddess smiled sweetly. "Is that the impression I give?" Jiu admitted that while his first instinct was to simply crush her where she stood, there was something he needed to ask first. "Did you dye your hair?" The goddess seemed pleased, he noticed. She explained that by taking 1,000 lives, she changed her class to the secret goddess of life, which altered her hair color. Jiu just stared at her, his eyes cold as ice. Raising his staff, he said, "You took 1,000 lives and became the goddess of life. Shouldn't it be the goddess of death?" The goddess just laughed, finding his observation amusing. "Absolutely." Jiu replied, his voice devoid of any humor. He slams his staff into the earth. A seismic wave of pure energy roars toward her. "I've heard the jokes," he bellows. "Now comes the part where I crush you." The goddess merely raises an eyebrow at his haste. Right as a cataclysmic explosion tears the world apart, Jiu stares into the billowing smoke, his face an unreadable mask. From within the chaos, her voice echoes, "What a pity. I truly wanted to chat some more." In the blink of an eye, she materializes right behind him. Jiu pivots instantly, slamming his staff down once again. The very ground shatters from the resulting shockwave. Urus cries out, "A direct hit!" As expected of Hyungnim, a flawless strike clean as splitting water. Jiu scoffs. Of course it was. These pretty-faced deities are all talk and no substance. But as the smoke begins to fade, he sees her, untouched, unharmed. The goddess simply watches him in eerie silence. "As I thought," she muses, "you have grown considerably stronger. But an attack this feeble could never claim the life of a god." "Hyungnim, look," Uri shrieks. "She's still alive. I have eyes, don't I?" Jiu snaps back. As they bicker, the goddess simply watches them, with an amused smile. Then Eurus freezes. Her gaze is locked directly onto him. But how is that possible? Impossible, he gasps. No one besides Hyungnim should be able to see me. Ju narrows his eyes. This is strange. He knows his attack landed. There's no reason she should be standing there without a single scratch. The goddess lets out a condescending laugh. Did you truly believe a mere mortal could harm a goddess? Ju feigns shock, resting his staff on his shoulder. Oh dear, he smirks. Now you've really made me mad. And in the next instant, he vanishes, charging toward her like a thunderbolt. The goddess stands her ground, awaiting the impact. Another world-shaking explosion rocks the landscape. Ju gives her no quarter and unleashing another blast immediately. His assault is relentless, a barrage of pure power that begins to fracture the very planet itself. Eurus can only watch in awe. The entire continent is shaking. At this rate, he's going to destroy everything. But the goddess simply declares, it's useless. With that same infuriating smile, she unfurls magnificent wings, ascending high above the main character. Eurus gasps in shock. Beads of sweat form on Ju's brow, his body radiating the strain of his immense power. The goddess's wings dissolve into a shower of ethereal feathers, gently floating around her divine form. She descends, walking toward him on air. So what will you do now, Mr. Hao? You must have spent every waking moment dreaming of how you'd kill me. Just give up, she whispers, her voice laced with pity. No matter how strong you become, no matter how much time passes, you can never kill me. She repeats her decree inches from his face. Ju just stares, his expression unreadable. He closes his eyes, letting out a long sigh as he looks to the heavens. Then he turns and takes a few steps back. Where are you going? The goddess mocks. Have you finally accepted your pathetic fate? His only reply is a few casual swings of his staff. Just testing something, he says nonchalantly. Wondering if I could swing hard enough to snap this thing in two? It's futile, the goddess sneers. I told you, you can never take my life. A slow, cold smile spreads across the main character's face. Who said you were my target? I'm aiming for the entire planet. The goddess is utterly speechless. If I can't kill you, Ju explains, his voice chillingly calm, then I'll just destroy the world we're standing on. You'll either be obliterated in the blast, or be tossed into the cold, empty vacuum of space. She stares in pure disbelief. A mere human could do such a thing. I can, he confirms, his eyes gleaming. All I have to do is strike with everything I have. I did something like this just earlier today, you know. And back then, I wasn't even using my full strength. The goddess's expression finally darkens. If you destroy this planet, you will die with it. This isn't revenge. It's just a pointless suicide. Would you truly be satisfied with that? She demands. A low chuckle escapes Ju's lips. He who had paid with his very life to learn the truth of this world, the truth of this game, where the law of the jungle was the only rule that mattered. Listen closely, he says, his voice dripping with menace. Now it's your turn to learn. Gods like you just don't get it. He raises his staff, its power thrumming. You should never ever mess with someone who has nothing left to lose. For the first time, panic flashes in the goddess's eyes. Wait, she pleads, but Ju unleashes his strike with every fiber of his being. The instant his staff strikes the ground, the world cracks apart. The goddess and Urus are consumed by the blinding light as a wicked, triumphant smile spreads across Ju's face. The very world is torn into 6 massive fragments before erupting into a glorious silent supernova. The shockwave tears through the entire Chrono Life universe, wiping out everything in a single ultimate attack. On a black screen, lines of system data begin to scroll. Meanwhile, in the real world, inside a dark room filled with virtual reality pods, an attendant is fast asleep at his desk. Suddenly, a player rips off his headset, screaming in pure frustration. He's been forcibly logged out of Chrono Life. Why did I get disconnected? He rages. We hadn't even reached the final boss yet. Chaos erupts among the other players. They demand answers, accusing the attendant of flipping the main switch when he shouldn't have. The startled employee pleads for calm, explaining this wasn't a simple power outage or a tripped breaker. One young man suggests the unthinkable, a server issue with Crowley, the game's developer. Instantly, a shout cuts through the noise. An official announcement has just appeared on their homepage. The notice confirms a server catastrophe with Chrono Life, and the reopening date is completely unknown. A wave of disbelief washes over the crowd. It was impossible. The legendary servers had actually crashed. But amidst the chaos, one player remains connected. His pod's light glows ominously, signaling he's still inside, even with the servers completely down. Back within the game, a system notification materializes. The client is synchronizing, updating to version 1.7 and scanning for active users. The final count returns a single person. Jayo finds himself floating in an empty void, surrounded by raw data. He looks around completely lost, wondering where he could be. This wasn't the game anymore. This was something else. Suddenly, a mysterious voice echoes in the darkness, mentioning ST-389. The voice explains that this was the name of the planet he had just obliterated, a world celebrated for its breathtaking beauty in the fourth universe, and the voice added with chilling intent their mother's favorite place. Shocked, Jiu spins to face the speaker, demanding to know who he is. The blonde man simply tells him to be quiet. A wicked smile then spreads across his face as he answers, "I am God." The main character just stares at him and sighs. "If that's your identity, it's none of my business," Jiu says coolly. "Have you seen a woman with black hair anywhere?" God replies that in this space, it was only the two of them. As if to prove his point, a system window appears before our hero, showing the current number of users was just 1. "What is wrong with you?" God questions. "You took the lives of everyone. It's common sense that no one could have survived that explosion. Every single living thing was wiped from existence." Hearing this, our main character begins to laugh, leaving God utterly baffled by his reaction. Jiu's laughter grows into a triumphant roar, shouting that his revenge was finally complete. He was ecstatic. This was the very reason he played the game. "Surus, come out, I finally have my revenge," he calls into the void. But even after his triumphant cry, nothing happens. Jiu slams his staff on the ground, calling for his dragon once more. "I already told you," God repeats, his voice laced with annoyance. "It's just the two of us here. So you shouldn't expect that child to appear." The main character's eyes narrow with suspicion. "If the current user count is 1, then what are you, an NPC or the administrator?" God simply replies that he is neither. But just as he tries to reveal his true identity, the fabric of reality itself begins to crack, and the sound of the rift tears his voice away. He sighs, complaining that something was already interfering. A brilliant light shines in the middle of the room, illuminating Jiu's face. "This is disappointing, but it was a pleasure to meet you," God says. "Farewell, and say hi to the little furry one for me." "Wait!" Jiu shouts in shock, but a blinding light engulfs them both, and the deity vanishes right before his eyes. The game server finally shuts down, and our hero is disconnected. In the real world, his is the only capsule still active. With a hiss, the pod opens, revealing Jiu's real body. The young man tears the virtual reality headset from his head. "Why the hell did he have to show up right now?" he grumbles. "And what was all that about a furry little thing?" That's when he notices him. A blonde man with a cigar in his mouth staring intently at him. The man stands and walks towards our hero, reciting his details. Lai Ji-woo, age 21. You've played Chrono Life for 3 months, and your weapon was the level 99 staff. Correct. Ju confirms, demanding to know who this man is. Removing his glasses, the man declares with a smirk, "I'm the one who's going to steal your staff." Mentally, our hero scrambles to assess the situation. He's just an ordinary college student who enjoys playing Chrono Life. In fact, until recently, he was a total beginner. But by an impossible stroke of luck, he had created a level 99 staff. With it, he had crushed everyone he disliked, including the woman who betrayed him. Then a man claiming to be a god appeared and vanished. And now he's in a restaurant surrounded by imposing men. Food is served at their table. While the blonde man eats with gusto, Ju just watches him. "Eat," the man says. "The lady who runs this place is a great cook." Ju agrees, his mind racing. The man explains this is the Gukbap restaurant he used to visit when he was penniless. That was 15 years ago. My company was established during the early stages of Chrono Life's development. The pieces slam together in Ju's mind. It can't be. The blonde man finally introduces himself properly. "I am the president of Chrono Life, Choi Dobek." "I thought you were a gangster," Ju blurts out. "And who are these guys?" Ju asks. "They're company employees," Dobek replies. "Modelers, music directors, the head of marketing." Ju admits he was terrified thinking they were mobsters. He then asks the critical question. "Why has the president of Crowley come after a player like me? Didn't I tell you back in the capsule room I'm here to collect the level 99 stick?" Ju could hardly believe what he was hearing. "What's with that look?" Deokbi asked calmly. "We're a game company. Retrieving bugged items is just part of the job." "But I'm the one who made it this strong," Ju shot back. "The success rate was only 3%. Deokbi simply replied, "That's the official chance after 10 successful enhancements. After that, as you know, the odds plummet even further." The revelation hit Gio like a ton of bricks. But he argued, if it's not a bug, then there's always a chance it could happen. He slammed his hands on the table and stood up. But Deekby just let out a heavy sigh. "The level 99 stick will be in my custody." Meanwhile, in the world of Chrono Life near the town of Frontal, a hulking monster stomped across an open field. It was a level 21 Garuze party of players braced for impact, shouting, "It's coming this way." The team's mage chanted an incantation, launching a fireball that exploded against the beast. The creature shrieked in pain. "It worked," the party leader roared. "Hit it again with everything you've got." But suddenly, a girl named Kyo let out a war cry and charged the monster all by herself. The leader yelled after her, "Don't break formation." It was too late. The beast swatted the girl with contemptuous ease, sending her flying high into the air. She crashed directly into the group's priestess, knocking them both out of the fight in an instant. Panic erupted among the remaining members. "We're in deep trouble," someone screamed. "Get up! We have to run!" Watching this disaster unfold from a safe distance, Juster stood motionless. He let out a short sigh, wondering what he was even supposed to do here. Beside him, Urus casually munched on chicken. "So, Hyung," he asked, "what's the plan?" Ju pondered for a second, then looked down at the simple stick in his hand. His stats perfectly normal. His mind flashed back to the restaurant. Deokbi had declared he would confiscate the plus 99 stick, and Jiu's heart had sunk. But the CEO simply said this was the company's official stance. Ju had protested. "This isn't fair." Deokbi then revealed he had personally investigated the matter and concluded the stick was not a bugged item. From this moment forward, the company would no longer meddle with his account. Whether he defeated the game's final boss, wiped out 3 million players, or shattered the entire world, as a user, he had total freedom. Deokbi then pushed a dish of salted vegetables towards him. "Just like adding this to your gukbap, the choice is entirely yours." Ju took the plate and rose from his seat. But in that very instant, the old woman who ran the restaurant smacked Deokbi right on the head. "What do you think you're doing putting that in my gukbap?" she scolded. "Are you trying to drive me mad?" she fumed. "I stayed up all night simmering that bone broth for you, and you're going to ruin it like this." Seeing the mighty CEO get disciplined like a child, Ju quietly put the plate of vegetables back down. Back in the present, Ju stared at his stick lost in thought about that salted vegetable soup. His focus was shattered by the angry shouts of the nearby party leader. "What kind of useless player are you?" he raged at the girl Kyuka. "Don't you even know how to hold your position? That's the absolute basic of party hunting." "You're nothing but a troll," he spat. "Because of you, this whole hunt is a bust. Why did we ever let you join?" Ju recalled another thing Deokbi had asked of him. "I know this might sound strange," he'd said, "but Chrono Life is a truly wonderful game. Freedom, romance, and adventure. It's a fantasy world bigger than you can possibly imagine. So please," he had requested, "try not to break it. Just enjoy yourself." Ju mulled this over for a moment. Suddenly, the party leader spat right on the girl's scarf. "Get lost," he sneered. "I'm not hunting with trash like you." He turned away disgusted that they were even using the same items. And just like that, Kayon was kicked from the party. Gia watched the scene inside. What a mess. But then again, this was the law of the jungle. He remembered Deokbi's words again. He would enjoy this game. Oh yes, he would enjoy it his own way. After all, he liked his salted vegetable soup. Extra, extra thick. With that thought, he raised his staff, a terrifying energy gathering at its tip. But just as he was about to unleash hell, a scream stopped him cold. Ju glanced over his shoulder. It was Kion screaming at the sky. "This game is trash. You can all go to hell." "Those idiots wouldn't know a good weapon if it hit them," she cried. "Do you know how much I paid for this sword?" Ju watched her stunned. He remembered saying those very same words about his own weapon. He remembered the strange looks people gave him back then, too. Kion then declared, "I don't need any of you. I'm done with parties." "I'll hunt all by myself," she vowed. Hearing her, Ju felt his own resolve begin to waver. But in the next moment, the girl froze hearing the deep growl of a monster that had just appeared right in front of her. She was completely surrounded. A horde of hideous creatures closed in their roars, shaking the very ground as they charged, promising a swift and brutal end. Kion braced herself for the impact, but in a flash, a mysterious figure appeared right before her. For a split second, he questioned his own impulse. Then, with a simple flick of his staff, he unleashed an overwhelming wave of power. In an instant, everything in its path was wiped from existence. As the dust settled, Kion slowly lowered her arms, only to lock eyes with her savior. Looking up, she saw the sky above him had been swept completely clean. Was it solidarity, or maybe pity? No, Ju concluded. It was neither. He did it, because it looked like it would be fun. A faint smile touched his lips, leaving the girl utterly baffled. The protagonist stepped closer, thinking to himself how chaotic this whole situation had become. And so the true story begins. He casually turned to her and asked, "Want to party up and hunt?" Her response was ice cold. "Get lost," she scoffed, spitting on the ground. "I don't hunt with newbies," she sneered before walking away. Ju was left completely dumbfounded. Not exactly a smooth start. Meanwhile, back in Seoul, life went on a world of people glued to their phones. One monumental event had captured the entire planet's attention. An event the world now called Judgment Day. A firestorm of debate raged across the global gaming community. Everyone wanted to know the identity of the player who had slaughtered 800,000 people. Was he a god of war, the undisputed king of Chrono Life? But one man's voice rose above the awe, declaring it was all a pathetic sham. He raged, "How could anyone be that strong? It's obviously a bug exploit or some disgusting hacker." And his opinion wasn't without merit. After all, facing down 3 million enemies was pure insanity. It was a number that raw stats and perfect control simply couldn't overcome. The community demanded justice, crying for the hacker to be banned forever, and for the Chrono Life developers to do their jobs. The world held its breath, waiting for the company's official response. Finally, the announcement dropped. As players screamed for blood, the Chrono Life team declared that the user in question was a legitimate normal player. Their investigation was conclusive. He wasn't a hacker, and he wasn't abusing any bugs. The news sent a shockwave across the globe, instantly silencing the controversy. In the streets of the city, everyone was talking about the legend. A single player had crashed the entire Chrono Life server. They said he'd wiped out an army in the blink of an eye, and the whole world was buzzing about him. They wondered what this legend was like in real life, his face hidden by a hood in the only photo ever released. Meanwhile, that very legend, Ju, was smiling as he followed the girl he'd just rescued. Silence stretched between them, broken only by their footsteps. Finally, simmering with irritation, the girl spun around. "Why are you still following me?" Keon demanded. Ju calmly replied, "We should form a hunting party." "When did I agree to that?" she shot back. "Go hunt with someone as poor and indecent as yourself." Ju was genuinely confused by the insult. Keon jabbed a finger at his gear. "You're wearing nothing but underwear under that cloak, and carrying a level 1 starter stick. I don't have time to play around with a total noob. Now get lost." Ju thought to himself, indecent, but I just saved you. I wiped out all those monsters with a single attack. Eurus's voice echoed in his mind. Her eyes were closed when you saved her human. And it clicked. Ah! Ju realized, so she has no idea that I'm strong. A mischievous grin spread across his face as an idea formed. Why don't I hide my power for a while? He ran after Kion, calling out, "Miss, please, carry me." The girl just stared at him, completely confused. Ju put on his most helpless act. "Truthfully, I don't know anything about this game. I'm a total newbie. Please master carry me." The word master sparked something in Kion. She remembered being looked down on by her old party leader. Being called master? It felt surprisingly good. "What in the world is my liege doing?" Eurus questioned in his mind. "I'm pretending to be weak," Ju whispered back. "It's the first step of the plan." The dragon recalled the grand scheme he'd mentioned earlier. Kion cleared her throat, trying to look composed. "How embarrassing. But I suppose it's my duty as an expert to help newbies." She shot him a party invite. "This expert will help you out, but just this once." Kion was a level 24 fighter, her stats poured entirely into strength. Near the starting town at a dungeon entrance, she locked onto a screaming monster and charged. Her fist connected with a devastating blow, sending the level 4 rabbit bear flying back, spewing blood. The beast was thrown backward, but before it could recover, another monster lunged from behind, forcing Kion into an agile leap to evade. She let out a sharp ki, executing a perfect aerial flip. The rabbit bear looked up in terror, just as she descended with a powerful kick. It was her signature skill, Fallen Dragon Stomp, which smashed the monster into nothing but a crater in the ground. The rabbit bears reel from the attack, but quickly rally, closing in on Kion from all sides, as she holds her battle stance with a taunting smirk. "Think you can handle this, master? Then come at me all at once." Meanwhile, Ju calmly observes the spectacle. "She's surprisingly skilled, isn't she?" he muses. Eurus wholeheartedly agrees with his young master. Our protagonist, however, notes that even if they're low-level mobs, being swarmed by that many is a huge threat. But Eurus scoffs, replying that there's no need to worry. That human is packing some seriously high-end gear. Her weapon alone is worth 10 million gold. Ju's jaw hits the floor. 10 million won. Eurus adds that her entire setup is top tier, probably valued at 100 million in total. Ju is baffled. How could a total newbie afford all that? The dragon then reveals the simple truth: she's a pay-to-win player. It all clicked. He remembered Kion's rant about those noobs who couldn't recognize her god-tier items gear she'd spent an absolute fortune on. Had she really dropped that much cash on a game? 100 million seemed like an insane investment. Suddenly, Kion whirls around and shouts at Ju, "Hey, just because I'm carrying you doesn't mean you can just sit there and watch. Grab that stick and hit something." Ju blinks, utterly confused. The girl insists, that's right. You have to fight for yourself if you want to get stronger. Stop being such a useless leech. As she lectures him, a rabbit bear lunges for her blind spot. This attitude of yours is just pathetic. It's like you have zero ambition to get stronger. She continues, completely oblivious to the danger right behind her. However, Ju simply touches the monster with his staff, and it's instantly annihilated, vanishing without a trace. Kion glances over, puzzled. What was that? Why was there a sudden gust of wind inside a sealed dungeon, she wonders. Ju panics internally. He was so screwed, he had no idea how to hide his insane power. Just then, a message pings for Kion, ordering her to log off immediately. An event was starting in 10 minutes. Kion sees the notification and lets out a heavy sigh. She tells Jiu she's logging out for a bit, promising to return in 30 minutes and telling him to keep hunting. Jiu is left completely baffled. What was her deal? Ditching him in a dungeon whenever she pleases. He wonders what she possibly does in real life to casually burn 100 million on a game. Eurus has no idea either, but speculates she was probably born with a golden spoon in her mouth. The scene shifts to a lavish high-rise apartment. Inside, Kion lies on her bed, still wearing her virtual reality headset. She disconnects from Chrono Life, sitting up with a sigh as she stares at the device. She's lost in thought, replaying the recent events. A small smile plays on her lips as she recalls the main character. Suddenly, the door flies open. Her producer storms in, shouting, "Are you out of your mind?" The producer raged that she was still plugged into that thing, as if she'd decided to just throw her career away. Kion shot back that she was just taking it off and that the producer should open her damn eyes, but was only called a game addict in response. Her producer ordered Kion to hurry and sit down. They had less than 10 minutes. She then started nagging her for playing with her glasses on again. She reminded her that she was supposed to take them off before using the headset because it always leaves a mark on her nose. Keon argued that she gets anxious without her glasses, and besides, any mark could be covered with makeup. Her producer shot her a death glare before sighing in defeat, muttering about what a pain she was, before telling her to sit down immediately. If it weren't for the money, the producer thought she would have wrung her neck by now. The makeup is laid out, and the producer yanks off Keon's glasses, quickly prepping her for the job. Keon lets her hair down, her entire aura changing. On a massive music show stage, a host shouts into the mic, thanking the roaring crowd, and announcing the final performance of Music Banking. The artist had held the #1 spot for 13 consecutive weeks. The nation's top idol, the greatest singer-songwriter of our time. Please welcome Han Sarang. Sarang begins to sing a heartfelt song about first love. After her stunning performance, she greets everyone and introduces herself. This is Han Sarang, idol singer and songwriter. Her hobby, a secret to the world, is hardcore online gaming. Back in the dungeon, the rabbit bears begin to charge toward our protagonist. Ju decides he needs to practice before she gets back. Iris asks him what kind of practice he means. The protagonist explains that if he ever wants to hide his true power, he must first learn how to perfectly control it. In other words, he's going to try attacking without completely destroying his targets. The scene cuts to a cosmic explosion radiating from a planet. A divine being watches with a smirk, commenting that the idea of attacking without killing sounds immensely entertaining. He turns to a maternal figure, a colossal sun blazing behind her, and asks if she agrees. The truth is, Han Sarang is a second-year high school student. After a difficult start in the music industry, she has clawed her way to become the top singer-songwriter of today. A journalist congratulates Sarang in disbelief that she has just won first place for the 14th time in a row. He's captivated by the tragic lyrics of her debut song, a modern retelling of The Little Mermaid, and asks for the secret behind her moving words. Sarang, with a shy smile, says she prefers staying home alone, immersing herself in poetry and classic fairy tales. The journalist remarks that this explains the song's enchanting title. Sarang then confides that her producer told her to keep the fairy tale hobby a secret, worried it might seem childish. This innocent confession charms the interviewer and the entire audience. He calls it fascinating, and she thanks him demurely. But from the sidelines, her producer scoffs, muttering that the damn schemer has the whole nation wrapped around her finger with that absurd lie. Because her real top-secret hobby? It's hardcore gaming. Back in the interview, the host praises Sarang's acting, mentioning her recent role as a bratty high school girl. Sarang confirms, explaining how difficult it was since she's never once uttered a curse word in her entire life. Yet, inside the game, a completely different person emerges, screaming at Ju, "You damn bastard!" She tears into him, demanding to know why he didn't greet his master upon her return. A confused Ju asks since when she became his master, and Sarang just yells, "From right now." She challenges him, asking if he has a problem being carried by her, but Ju hastily denies it. This is how Sarang blows off steam from her idol life. Iris, meanwhile, advises his Hyung to ditch this ridiculously rude woman. But Geo calmly explains he must conceal his true power to continue his act of being weak. Sarang then orders him to repeat after her lovely master. She makes him chant it over and over as Iris smirks, realizing his plan had actually worked perfectly. On their way to the dungeon, Sarang stops asking Geo if he's been practicing by hunting monsters. Jo just sighs, explaining that his training requires extreme patience, and his journey is far from over. Iris shouts that it's useless to attack without dealing any damage, but the main character quickly tells him to shut up. Sarang just laughs, calling him an eccentric newbie, and admitting she's looking forward to this. She suddenly realizes she still doesn't know his name, asking what Underpants guy calls his character. A baffled Jew thinks he's already told her, but as he tries to speak, she cuts him off, deciding Underpants is a perfectly good name. "Yeah, that sounds good," she declares with a nod. Utterly frustrated, our hero wonders why she even bothered asking. All the while, hidden in the distance, a group of players spies on them. A man with a thick beard announces, "I've found her." His subordinate asks for orders, and the leader commands them to gather every guild member in the dungeon. Today, they would finally claim their justice. Deeper inside, a massive rabbit bear appears. The level 22 monster barrels toward the young idol. Sarang points, yelling, "Underpants go!" And our hero obeys like a trained puppy, charging the beast, as they both let out a battle cry. The protagonist puts on a show, stumbling forward like a complete fool. He slowly raises his staff and meticulously pokes a single strand of the creature's fur. In that instant, the rabbit bear's head is brutally crushed, a massive wound appearing from nowhere. Utterly confused, the beast collapses. But it's not dead. Its HP bar clings to life with a single pixel of health remaining. Ju smirks, pleased with himself. His hit-without-killing strategy was a complete success. Sarang cheers amazed. He defeated it on the first try and has grown so strong. But in a flash, a dagger comes flying straight for her, sensing the killing intent. Sarang reacts instantly, grabbing Ju's shirt and yanking him to safety, while deflecting the blade with a precise, powerful kick. The bearded man snatches his dagger out of the air, his face twisted in a venomous sneer. He mocks her, saying she's incredible, but it's all thanks to her high-level gear. Sarang glares, demanding to know who he is. The man known as Mr. Kim feigns being hurt, asking if she's already forgotten his voice. He reveals that they are all members of the Halasan Guild. The moment she hears that name, Sarang repeats it with pure, unadulterated contempt. Mr. Kim smirks, saying it's been a while, and demands to know what the two of them are plotting. With a roar, he orders his men to attack. "Get back, it's dangerous," Sarang warns Jiu as she drops into a battle stance. A swarm of assassins surges forward, weapons gleaming. In a blur of motion, she unleashes a devastating kick directly to an assassin's face, knocking him out cold in a single blow. Using his falling body as a springboard, she launches herself into an acrobatic flip. Shouting the name of her skill, Fallen Dragon Stomp, she smashes her heel into the ground with overwhelming force, sending a shockwave that blasts all the assassins into the air. Their enraged leader screams for them to attack all at once. Watching the chaos unfold, Jiu calmly asks what's going on, and Iris admits he has no idea. The protagonist, however, simply states that based on what he's seeing, he has a pretty good idea. It was clear these Halasan Guild goons had a history with Sarang, a history of picking fights, and getting utterly crushed every single time. But their leader clearly hadn't learned his lesson, because he was back again thirsty for a revenge he'd never get. Jiu sized them up with a single glance. Utterly pathetic, a mob around level 20 being toyed with by her. Iris silently agreed. The battle raged on just as Kim had foreseen. With Sarang completely occupied, he gave the signal. The real plan was about to begin. In a blur of motion, a new shadow vanished, only to reappear directly behind Sarang, her claws poised for a fatal strike. Sarang spun around her instincts, screaming danger. Her attacker was barehanded, a fighter class then, a deadly one. The woman smirked, activating her skill. Steel! A brilliant flash of light erupted, blinding Sarang in an instant. When her vision cleared, her heart sank. Her battle fists, they were gone. The thief chuckled, admiring her prize. "You must be some rich little princess to own a treasure like the Silencing Fist." Jiu watched, stunned. "What kind of skill was that?" Iris explained it was Steel, a rogue class ability. But something felt off. The skill seemed far too powerful. Jiu just scoffed. It's not like she could steal anything from him. After all, he only had his cloak and, well, his underwear. But then a cold dread washed over him, his staff. A horrified grin spread across Jiu's face. Without a second thought, he bolted, screaming for his life. Kim watched him flee. "Ah yes, there was that other guy," he remarked, completely worthless. One look was enough to see he was a rookie with nothing to his name. But as Jiu scrambled away, the thief's eyes lit up with a predatory gleam. She tossed the gauntlets to Kim. "You might not get it," she purred, "but stealing from a nobody is the best kind of fun." In a heartbeat, she appeared right in front of our main character. "Going somewhere, darling," she whispered, blocking his path. Jiu froze as she aimed her hands at him. He gritted his teeth. This was no time to hold back. He gripped his staff, unleashing a powerful slash. But nothing. A dead silence fell over the battlefield. Even Urus was speechless. The dust settled, revealing Jiu standing empty-handed. His main weapon had vanished, now held mockingly by the thief. She flashed a wicked smile. "This little stick is all mine now." A cold sweat trickled down our protagonist's back. "Maybe I'll take that hood next," she teased, "leaving you in nothing but your shorts." But just then, a menacing shadow fell over her. The thief looked up confused and froze. Before her stood the true terrifying form of Urus. "You dare touch me, mortal!" a booming voice echoed. The girl collapsed in pure terror, the staff clattering to the ground beside Jiu. Jiu's eyes fell upon his staff. He reached down and took it back into his hand. A system window appeared. The soul of Urus rejects the unworthy. Ownership has been returned to its true master. Urus materialized from the staff, radiating ancient power. "Insolent fool! No one wields me but my master," he roared. It seemed the thief had bit off more than she could chew. Jiu just reached out and patted the fearsome dragon's head, making him blush. The thief, still trembling, could only cough and crawl away from this monstrous boy, her mind racing to process what she'd just seen. A ghost, no. That presence, that pressure, it was all too real. Kim's voice cut through her fear. "What's wrong? Did you forget the job?" The thief scrambled to her feet. "Never. I'm a pro. All I care about is the cash." Just then, a furious Sarang stormed towards them. "Give them back, you thief!" she roared, launching a powerful kick. The thief dodged gracefully. "Whoa, you scared me." "Such a fiery attack," she teased. "But I'm afraid you want the man over there. He has your toys now." Watching the chaos unfold, Kim clenched his fists, a triumphant smile spreading across his face. "You bastards! I'll kill you all!" Sarang screamed, lunging forward, only to suddenly collapse, knocked unconscious by a gentle touch from our hero. Jiu explained calmly, "It's my skill strike without killing." The thief was bewildered. "What are you doing? Aren't you two on the same side?" Our protagonist just smiled. "I was just hiding my true power." "What the hell are you on about?" she stammered. Before she could finish, a wave of pure force exploded from him. In a single devastating moment, every assassin was wiped out. The thief stared at the carnage, completely dumbfounded. "Darling, was that all you—" Joe bonked her on the head with his staff. Yep, all me. Her health bar plummeted, leaving only a sliver of life. He activated his skill once more. I've been through hell and back, he said, his voice low. It's made my mind much stronger. But a moment ago you almost gave me a heart attack. You made me think I'd lost my weapon. His aura erupted, shaking the very ground. When the light faded, Sarang awoke in a peaceful open field. Confused, she pushed herself up, startled by the change of scenery. From behind a tree, a calm voice called out, You're finally awake? Panty boy, she blurted out, utterly confused. Where are we? And what happened to those thugs? Joe calmly explained they were near the dungeon, and the enemies had vanished. Vanished? And why did I suddenly pass out? She demanded. Suddenly, Sarang felt a familiar weight in her hands. Her powerful fists. They were back. Joe cut straight to the point. Was it the Hallison Guild? He pressed for answers. Who are they and what's their deal? Sarang's cheeks flushed. Why was this guy being so kind? Was he trying to find a new way to die or something? But her suspicion melted away, replaced by a wry smile and a sigh. Fine, you got dragged into this because of me, she admitted. Ever heard of the term pay to win? Joe had no idea what she meant. Urus chimed in, explaining it's a term from online games. The main character was stunned. How could an NPC know that? Urus coolly replied. I looked it up on Wikipedia. He began reciting the definition word for word. But Sarang cut him off. Basically, she simplified, they're whales who dump billions into games just to be strong. You mean the Hallisan Guild? Ju asked. She nodded grimly. Every last one of them. She explained that a few months ago, she'd snagged these very fists at a random auction. And ever since the Hallisan Guild had been hunting her relentlessly for them. But they're just a bunch of rich old-timers with trash skills. That's why I've beaten them every single time. Anyway, how did you get these back? Did you steal them? Ju gave a simple answer. They just left them behind. Maybe they forgot. Sarang was skeptical. Something wasn't right. They'll be back, she declared. That old geezer's obsession is no joke. Ju agreed. The whole situation fell off. But why are they so desperate for your weapon? Sarang looked at him like he was crazy. Isn't it obvious these things are worth 10 million gold? And that's exactly why it's weird, our hero countered. These guys throw around billions, yet they're obsessed over a 10 million gold item. There's definitely something more to this story. Later at the Hallisan Guild's hideout, blood sprayed across the floor as Kim collapsed violently before his leader. Kim begged for another chance, but his pleas fell on deaf ears. Silence! The leader roared, calling them all useless. I'm done wasting time. I'll leave this to the 4 heavenly kings. Kim's eyes darted sideways. 3 imposing figures emerged from the shadows, standing before their master. The second heavenly king sneered. It's an insult that trash like him is even in our division. He's only worth 100 million gold, the third king added. We told you to kick him out, but the great Hyangnim is far too merciful. The first heavenly king, however, remained silent. The second king crouched by the broken Kim. Hiring a mercenary. What a pathetic strategy. No wonder you failed so miserably. But the first king finally spoke. Enough. Leave this matter to me. He casually brushed back his hair. The silencing fist, or whatever it's called. Its effect will activate in 12 hours. At these words, the leader erupted into manic, joyous laughter. Yes, Lord King, with a net worth of 12 billion, he bellowed. He commanded his men, show them the true terror of the Hallisan Guild. Let the blood festival begin. But just then, Ju appeared out of nowhere, casually scratching his nose. The entire guild stared completely dumbfounded. Geo shattered the silence with a contemptuous scoff. A blood festival? Don't make me laugh. He openly mocked the so-called 4 heavenly kings. The irritated king demanded, Who are you, and where did you come from? Ju smirked. Why don't you try and figure it out? And then, in a show of ultimate disrespect, he picked his nose. He thought to himself, if they keep messing with Sarang, it's going to be hard to keep pretending I'm weak. A low, amused chuckle escaped his lips. He mocked their grand titles one last time. Let's end this little farce. The king, seething with rage, screamed, Kill that crazy bastard! His underlings swarmed forward, unleashing their strongest attacks, closing the distance in a terrifying instant. But Jiu remained unfazed, a calm smile playing on his lips. With a single effortless swing of his staff, a wave of power erupted, obliterating them all. They were annihilated by a mere twig. Meanwhile, a girl approached the hideout, humming a cheerful tune. Back inside, the first heavenly king charged, but Geo dispatched him with a single brutal strike, sending him flying and spitting blood. In that moment, a massive explosion ripped the hideout clean in two. The approaching girl, the goddess of life, was startled for a moment. But a knowing smile spread across her face. She knew exactly who was causing all this chaos. The enraged Lord King bellowed his final order. All remaining members of the Hallisan Guild, attack him at once! Faced with this new menace, Geo merely sighed, his grip tightening on the simple wooden staff. He casually remarked that to take his life, they'd need an army of at least 3 million. Then his staff blurred into motion. A single blow smashed into an assassin's face, erupting in an explosion that pierced the heavens. A faint smile touched his lips as he flicked the twig to the right, instantly annihilating everyone in that direction. The king watched in frozen horror, completely terrified by the massacre. As he rose, Kim screamed for his hyung, warning him to flee or face utter destruction. But the king knew. Kim couldn't possibly understand the terrifying reality of their situation. Besides himself and his inner circle, every single guild member was a pay-to-win whale. Even their weakest recruit had dropped at least 10 million, and not even the top 5 guilds dared to look down on their wealth. So who was this monster? How could he do this? Then a horrifying realization dawned on the king. They never stood a chance. Could this man be the one from the legends, the ultimate player who crushed everyone in his path? Staring at Gio in pure terror, his mouth hung agape as a forgotten memory surfaced the stick underwear guy. His own journey began back in the 2nd grade. Back in those days, games lacked the flashy graphics of today, and leveling up was a true grind without quests or raids. But for 9-year-old Wang, it was pure bliss. He'd even risked getting scolded for playing secretly at night. He cherished those memories of leveling up side by side with his friends. But the years flew by. He grew up swept away by the tide of responsibility, living a frantic life with no time left for nostalgia. In a blink, he was in his 40s, known to the world as CEO Wang, sitting before a computer in a sterile, pristine room. A subordinate entered, addressing him as Hung Nim, announcing he'd found the vintage monitor he'd requested. Wang wanted a special gift for himself, a relic from a bygone era, a reward for working harder than anyone else. His subordinate questioned the choice. Why use an old machine for an online game that could be played on a new one? Wang simply replied, "It's for the atmosphere." His heart pounded with anticipation, as if he were traveling back in time. It felt like reuniting with a long-lost first love. However, he gritted his teeth as a bitter truth struck him. He wasn't the only thing warped by the ravages of time. Just then, Jiu's staff struck another subordinate, slamming the man into the unforgiving earth. As a massive tremor shook the battlefield, the king stood frozen, paralyzed by the absolute terror of the scene before him. "It's almost over," Jiu declared. "Only you two are left." The king remained silent as the protagonist slowly closed the distance. This was the end for the pay-to-win gods. He wondered why men of their status needed to steal gear from other players. Now it was time for the old man to receive his punishment. The king recalled sitting at his desk, furiously typing, until the payment was confirmed, a staggering 12 billion won. He wasn't the only one changed by time, Wang thought. He no longer needed to put in any effort. With a few clicks and a lot of cash, he could become infinitely powerful. And with that power, those who couldn't afford it suffered. This was the new law of online gaming, pay to win. Snapping back to reality, Wang rose from his throne. He had searched countless games, but they were all the same. Finally, he found the acclaimed Chrono Life, where he hoped to find that one thing he had long forgotten. That feeling from his childhood, just as the stick slammed into his head. Jiwoo had used his Mercy Strike skill. Wang coughed up blood and collapsed utterly defeated. Kim cried out for his Hung Nim, but Jiwoo simply announced, "As of today, the Hollisan Guild is disbanded." He added that it was a hassle, so they should leave Captain Amor alone. "I hope to never see you again," he said before turning to leave. Struggling to his feet, Wang couldn't believe it. Was that really him? The legend who crushed the 5 great guilds and single-handedly wiped out 3 million members of the World Guild. Joe glanced back, his silence deafening. A broken laugh escaped Wang's lips. "How much did you spend?" he asked. "It must have cost a fortune to gain that kind of power." He sneered, thinking this fool would soon realize all his effort was for something that didn't even exist. From a distance, Kim watched his Hung completely bewildered. Ju just shrugged. "I have no idea what you're talking about, but I did spend a hefty sum myself." "How much?" Wang pressed, his mind racing. Tens of billions, hundreds of billions of won, but the protagonist's answer shattered his world. 55,000 won for the Warriors starter pack. Wang was utterly stunned, completely speechless, his entire reality beginning to fracture as Ju walked away. Then a slow smile crept across Wang's face. He whispered the amount, 55,000 won. A flood of memories returned of his childhood spent playing Ragnarok. And then he began to laugh. A genuine, excited laugh that grew into a hysterical roar, leaving Kim utterly confused by the sight. After Ragnarok, how many games has it been? Wang wondered. Kim sighed. It has to be around 8 by now. Their boss just cackled, declaring the game was a masterpiece. Chrono Life is truly a divine creation. A radiant figure appeared, her voice confirming his words. It was the goddess of life herself. "Greetings, members of the Hollisan Guild," she purred. "What a lovely evening." Her gaze swept across the room, cold and calculating. "It's been some time, but this hideout is an absolute mess." She turned, her eyes narrowing. "And what of that other matter? Have you prepared it as I commanded?" Wang began to answer, stating the preparations were on track. But she cut him off sharply. "Why do you insist on dwelling on the past?" Wang stood his ground. "I'm out. Our little agreement to cooperate ends right here, right now." The goddess's eyes widened for a split second, before a cruel smile bloomed on her face. Is that so? With a graceful flick of her scepter, she sliced through the air. Kim could only watch in absolute terror. His jaw hung open, as Wang's body collapsed to the floor, cleaved perfectly in two. A subordinate tried to scream his boss's name, crying out for his Hyungnim Chiu. The goddess of life, however, walked on completely unfazed by the carnage. Perhaps I should have asked for his reasons, she mused. But I'm not in the mood, so it is of no consequence. In a flash, she plunged the staff straight through Kim's back. Blood sprayed across her divine face. A cry of agony ripped from Kim's throat as he struggled, but his life was extinguished in an instant. The goddess surveyed the scene, a chilling smile spreading across her lips as she recalled the main character's words. His hair bled back to black, his clothes reverting to their original form. He uttered a single name, his voice filled with resolve. Captain, Amore. His kill count surged past 99,998. Then, 99,999 a system window flashed. You have annihilated the Hallison Guild, calculating combat experience. New total 999,000 kills. Jiu stared completely bewildered by the announcement. Then another notification appeared. You have reached the maximum level. What in the world is this? The young man muttered. What's wrong? Eurus asked beside him. Didn't you see that ridiculous message? The system? It just said I hit max level or something. Jiu frantically opened his status window. Class Novice, level 999. With nearly 5,000 unallocated points, he and Eurus stared at the screen, utterly speechless. It made absolutely no sense. How was this possible? In the game Chrono Life, the undisputed #1 virtual reality game in the world, a game that dominated every chart, reaching the max level was considered an impossible dream. Even the legendary professional gamer Lee Sang-yak, known to the world as Faker, had declared it an unreachable feat. Players across the globe grinded day and night, yet none had ever reached level 999, the fabled master level. Faker once theorized that even if every top ranker on the planet, including himself, hunted monsters 24 hours a day without rest, it would still take them several decades to accomplish such a feat. And yet Jiu could only stare at his own stats in complete and utter disbelief. Eurus, on the other hand, was exploding with excitement. The world's first level master, just as expected of my young Nim. He was bursting with pride. Jiu remembered being just level 7 not long ago, but the result was undeniable. The day he first held the stick, he had slaughtered 800,000 players. Beyond that, countless monsters and entire dungeons were completely obliterated in his wake. Add to that the experience from Chrono Life's ultimate boss Eurus and the armies of the highest level dungeons. The final overwhelming push came from the massacre of 3 million members of the World Guild Alliance, and of course the experience from destroying an entire planet. Thus, the world's first level master was born from overwhelming destruction. Suddenly, a brilliant pillar of light erupted from beneath the hero's feet, bathing the entire world in its sacred glow. System alert. Having reached the maximum level, the player will now be transferred to the transcendental space. And with that, he vanished without a trace. Meanwhile, in another corner of the city, Sarang was sprawled out on a rooftop, staring blankly at the sky. I'm so bored, she muttered, her patience wearing thin. She shot to her feet. Where in the world is that underwear-wearing bastard? He told her to wait for just a moment. But the sun had already set hours ago. She paused, remembering he'd mentioned the Hallisan Guild, and that she needed to report. Sarang sighed dramatically and flopped back down, shouting, Whatever. This generous master will grant him 1 more hour. In a realm of floating islands and impossible architecture, Jiu materialized inside a strange temple. Where am I? He looked up at the cosmos above, understanding nothing. Why was he constantly being dragged from one place to another? It was just like when he met God in Dakpa. A booming voice suddenly echoed through the hall. Welcome, child of man. I never dreamed we would meet this soon. You are truly exceptional. The voice was so powerful it made the very space around him tremble. I am the guide of transcendence, the god of class. I welcome you. You have taken the very first step on a long and arduous journey. To reach the master level as a mere novice, your struggle is worthy of the highest respect. Eurus couldn't believe it. Did you forget to change your class? He demanded. Jiu simply smirked, revealing he was once an aspiring prosecutor. Just then, the conditions were finally met. The transition to the legendary secret class had begun. A blinding light engulfed his body as countless spheres of energy materialized before him. One, bearing the symbol of a sword, shot forward and struck him with blinding speed. The soul of the blade fused with his very being. Immediately after, spheres representing every weapon imaginable descended upon him. The soul of the shield, the bow, the wand, the gauntlets, and the spear. One by one, they all became a part of him. Every single weapon soul in existence now resided within his body. Jiu felt an unimaginable power coursing through him as the system announced the class change was complete. He was now a masterclass novice. As a special privilege, all his stat points were recalled only to be tripled. In an instant, his entire status window began to warp and shift. Every attribute reset to a base value of 5, and a jaw-dropping 15,000 undistributed points appeared. Urus was utterly speechless. 15,000 points. What is happening? Is this the power of a secret class change? Joe calmly asked if that was more shocking than discovering a secret class in the first place. Urus didn't hesitate to say yes. Normally, you only get 5 points per level, he stammered. But you just got 15,000. Even among other max-level users, your raw stats are already 3 times higher. This was absurd. This would go down as the single greatest event in the history of the entire gaming world. Ignoring the frantic dragon, Jew began to analyze his newfound power. A chilling smile spread across his face as he began to pour all of his points into a single stat, clicking again and again. Master, what are you doing? Urus screamed in disbelief. I'm distributing my stats, Jew replied without a hint of concern. I know that, but why so carelessly? If you waste even a single point, you'll be branded a failure for life. The dragon's expression twisted into pure horror. Why are you putting everything into one stat? And of all the stats, why that one? Jew finished his allocation and declared, I don't need anything else right now. This is more than enough. You've ruined everything, Urus cried out. You're just a loser. Meanwhile, at the Chrono Life company headquarters, an employee burst into the president's office shouting that they had a major problem. President Dokbei asked what the commotion was about. The employee could only say he had to see it for himself, because the issue was with that user. Inside the main control room, Dokbei strode over, asking what was going on. His subordinate simply gestured at the main monitor. Dokbei's eyes widened slightly. The stick kid finally hit max level. The employee shook his head. Sir, the level isn't the problem. It's what he's doing. So what's the big fuss? Which stat did he end up choosing? Dokbei asked. The employee pointed to the screen, revealing the stat that had left everyone stunned, and the president deeply impressed. A moment later, however, Dokbei burst into roaring laughter. Ha 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 ha! This kid truly loves our game. He's enjoying it to the absolute fullest in his own unique way. The employee insisted this was no laughing matter, arguing that the character would be completely useless if he realizes he's built a trash character. Who knows what he'll do in a fit of rage? But Dokbei simply waved him off. Relax, I've told you all countless times. The game company has no right to interfere in a player's free will. His employee tried to argue, but the president was already walking away. As he left, Dokbei thought to himself, to think he dumped everything into that one stat, and even unlocked the Novice Master title. He couldn't believe his staff was calling it a trash build with no future. Because in the entire history of virtual reality gaming, the weakest and at the same time the absolute strongest character had just been born. Back in the game, Jew admired his work with a satisfied grin. Suddenly, the god of classes himself manifested before him. Transcendental One, listen well. This is the final step of my guidance. You must make an important choice. The right to wield one of my transcendental weapons shall be granted to you. Jiwoo's eyes lit up. What incredible luck! If it's free, there's no way I'm saying no. He gazed at the legendary weapons, all of them radiating immense power. After a moment of thought, he announced his decision. Ju stretched out his hand and commanded, "Give me all of them." The divine being remained silent, processing the human's audacity. Childish human. It finally spoke, "I cannot fulfill such a request. Excessive greed will only lead you to ruin. Choose wisely," the god warned. But Jiu cut him off. "Are you going to give them to me now? Or would you rather I beat the hell out of you first?" A stunned silence fell over everything. Every observer was left completely breathless by his declaration. Back in the control room, Dokbei's cigar fell from his lips. He too was in shock, thinking, this guy? He's a complete and utter madman. The god of classes gave no answer. Instead, a system notification declared that the deity was now seething with uncontrollable rage. Its divine expression warped into one of pure fury. Their relationship had just turned hostile. The deity was now preparing for battle. Gripping his staff, Jiu declared he understood perfectly. The god was practically begging for a beatdown. The air crackled as they both prepared for war. A shield suddenly hurtled towards him. Jiu raised his staff to defend himself, but the impact was immense. The sheer force slammed him into the very ground he stood on. "Hyung!" Urus cried out in shock. The god of classes, however, simply sighed with false regret. "I never imagined I'd take a transcendent's life with my own hands," he lamented. "What a waste." In that instant, a blast of pure energy erupted from the staff, striking him square in the face and melting half of it away. From the crater, Ju casually commented, "Wow, that actually stung. Is it because you're a god?" His health bar had barely budged. His constitution stat had skyrocketed to an insane 15,000 points. This single attribute governed his maximum HP, his recovery rate, and even his immunity to status effects. Urus could only stare dumbfounded. He thought to himself, is he crazy, dumping all his points into one stat? "You've made a fatal mistake, Hyungnim. You've turned yourself into a trash tier character," he screamed. Ju just looked at him, genuinely confused. "Why?" Eurus frantically explained that every piece of equipment in Chrono Life has a weight limit, demanding a minimum strength stat no matter the class. In other words, he couldn't equip anything more than that flimsy twig in his hands. "This is all I need," the protagonist replied with unwavering confidence. Just then, a system window materialized between them. A hidden skill. Its activation conditions had finally been met. What is that?" Eurus stammered. The skill was called Healing Factor. It converted all damage received into instant healing, completely refilling his HP bar. "A trash character, you say?" Ju taunted as Eurus's mind completely shattered in disbelief. The god of classes groaned, his face a ruin of melted flesh. "Insignificant mortal! How dare you!" he roared, unleashing destructive beams from his eyes. Ju took the attack head-on, not even bothering to dodge, and was blasted to the ground once more. Eurus rushed forward, screaming his Hyungnim's name, but Jiu just erupted in laughter. "As expected, Chrono Life is the best," he cheered as the gaping hole in his chest regenerated in seconds. "How disgusting," Eurus thought. "Perish, you tainted worm," the god shrieked, raining down a torrent of relentless blows. But Jiu just stood there, absorbing every single attack. His health would dip for a split second, only to surge back to full immediately after. The god of classes attacked without end, trapped in a completely futile cycle of his own making. Yet Ju simply endured it all with a mocking laugh. His HP bar became a flickering illusion, endlessly dropping and rising. "All right, that's enough," he announced, his tone shifting. "Let's end this now." After all, thanks to this god, he'd gained quite a few benefits. So it was time for the enemy to hand over his entire armory and vanish. The god of classes sneered, "Human child, your infinite greed will one day consume you. On that day, you will be utterly doomed." But Ju just readied his staff, casually replying, "Like I care." He unleashed a devastating upward slash that connected perfectly, striking the god of classes with absolute finality. The system announced it loud and clear. The god of classes had ceased to exist. In that moment, reality itself began to fragment, shattering like glass. A new message appeared. The transcendent space is collapsing. You will be forcibly returned to your original world. That entire dimension began to shrink, folding in on itself, until it blinked out of existence. Back in the familiar world of Chrono Life, a pillar of light descended upon a hill, depositing Ju on the grass below. Weapons of immense power rained down around him. These were the legendary transcendent weapons, and now Ju was the sole owner of them all. The weapons began to glow, transporting themselves to a personal subspace from where they would answer his call forever. A grin spread across Ju's face. This was going to be fun. Meanwhile, Sarang was fuming. How dare that punk make her wait this long? She swore she wouldn't let it slide no matter what his excuse was. Suddenly, a sound echoed from behind her. Joe placed his fingers on his forehead in a playful salute. "Hello, I'm back." His face was immediately introduced to her fist. She followed up with a kick, screaming, "I said I'd wait a little while, and now it's pitch black outside." Joe apologized sheepishly. "I thought I'd be back sooner, but a few things came up." He shrugged. "Anyway, I'm here now." Sarang gritted her teeth and yelled, "I'm leaving." "Where are you going?" Joe asked. The girl shot back, "Logging out of this stupid game." He just gave her a cheerful wave. Sarang seethed once more but held back. She pointed a finger at him. "Be online tomorrow night at 7 p.m. sharp. That's when I get off work. If you're late again, I will literally end you," she threatened. Ju watched her vanish from the game. "She really does whatever she wants, huh?" he mused. Eurus then appeared, asking what that was all about. Jiu stood up and stretched. "Well, I'm logging out too. It's way past midnight in the real world." The system prompted, "Do you wish to log out?" Ju confirmed his choice. Out in the real world, Ju stepped out of the connection room. The attendant thanked him and wished him a good day. The protagonist let out a massive yawn. What a day, he thought. Chrono Life really was a blast. Then his mind turned to business. I wonder how much I can sell those transcendent weapons for. As the very first items of their kind to ever appear, they were probably worth an absolute fortune. But were these items even tradable? If not, this was all for nothing. A nearby shop caught his eye and his stomach rumbled. Should he grab a quick bowl of goopbap? But one glance at his empty wallet crushed that idea. He walked on a familiar sadness washing over him, so tired of being trapped in poverty. The game's subscription fee was going up again, which meant he'd have to grind even more shifts at his part-time job. As he drifted through the city streets, a thought suddenly struck him, and he stopped dead in his tracks. Wait a second, he muttered, recalling what Urus had said. The gear was worth 10 million, and the entire set could fetch up to 100 million. An insane idea sparked in his mind. What if he could sell these game items for real-world money? With that stunning realization, Gio spun on his heel and sprinted back. Every ranker in Chrono Life knew of the Forbidden Zone, the intersection of life, a graveyard for all mortals. It was the most difficult hunting ground in the game's history, a legendary realm that no one had ever conquered. For reasons unknown, its existence was a closely guarded secret. And now, deep within that valley of the undead Eurus's domain, Ju had returned. Eurus, dressed in a flawless butler's attire, welcomed Ju to his home. The hunter, however, walked right past him without a word. A confident smirk spread across his face as he announced, "I'll be in your care for a while." Eurus simply agreed. "As you wish, Youngnim. Please make yourself at home." Joe declared that revenge had blinded him before causing him to overlook the mountain of treasure he'd left behind. But today, he would claim it all. The dragon butler could only pity his former allies. In that instant, a terrifying blast of energy descended upon the valley. As the smoke cleared, Urus's entire army emerged, closing in on Ju from all sides. But Ju just smiled. At that very moment, his life of endless suffering was finally over. He was about to make an absolutely obscene amount of money. His new life as a rich man was about to begin. The Valley of Ghosts, the game's highest-level hunting ground, was utterly obliterated by a single swing of his staff. Turbet of Despair, Lapis of the Abyss, and Trish of the Dawn, the three most powerful leaders of Urus's army, were erased from existence in the same way. With just music, 2 devastating attacks, every monster in the valley was annihilated, their weapons and armor clattering to the ground. A shower of priceless items rained down. Urus noted that it was all over in a flash, and that they had made an incredible profit. Ju, however, scoffed. "Over? Don't be ridiculous. This is just the beginning." Confused Eurus asked what he meant. The hunter simply gestured toward the smoke, telling him to look. The monsters were already respawning. This was a basic game mechanic. Once killed, monsters would reappear after a certain amount of time. However, unique entities like the twin-headed dragon Urus would not. "This is my first time selling items," Ju stated. "So I plan to repeat this process at least 100 times. And just like that, another world-shaking explosion echoed through the valley. A while back, there was a very interesting lecture at Harvard University. The lecturer asked the audience if they knew Bill Gates, the richest man on the planet and founder of Microsoft. He explained that if Bill Gates happened to find $100 on the ground, he wouldn't even bother picking it up. The reason it would actually be an economic loss. It takes 2 to 3 seconds to bend down and grab the money. But in that short time, he earns at least $150 per second. In other words, picking it up would cost him about $200. Back in the Valley of Ghosts, however, the math was a little different. With a literal mountain of loot piled high on the ground, the time it took to farm 100 waves of monsters was about 1 hour, including the respawn cooldown. In total, the value of the items on the ground was about 15 billion won. According to the lecture, Bill Gates earns approximately 500 million won per hour. In a single moment, a young broke part-timer from South Korea had completely shattered the hourly income of the world's wealthiest man. The very next day, in the heart of Seoul, a saleswoman at a Gucci store was bowing deeply to Ju. "Thank you for your purchase. Please come again." He walked out of the store clad in an outfit worth over 3 million won. He had also bought a brand new supercar and all kinds of other luxury goods. People on the street stared in awe, some whispering that they'd never seen a Lamborghini in person before. Ju took off his 2 million won sunglasses, and as he sped away, thought to himself, "It's time to show off." He floored it, and immediately crashed into a lamppost. His face pale with shock, he screamed, "My 400 million won Lamborghini!" A few minutes later, however, he casually rolled up in a new one, commenting, "Whatever, I can just buy another one." Meanwhile, at the Chrono Life building, Dukeby lit a pricey cigar, placing a hand on his head as he seethed with frustration. He ordered his employee to continue the report. The man stammered, summarizing that the company was ruined and they needed to escape. Dukeby roared, "Is there any way to block that bastard's transactions?" But his pleas were met with cold refusal. The chairman's tantrum was cut short by the sudden ringing of his phone. He answered, already spewing venom about his miserable fate. From the other end, Gio's smooth voice dripped with sarcasm, mentioning he was off to spend more money. A feeling the chairman must remember well. The taunts didn't stop there. Ju mused about performing a charitable act, wondering if the chairman needed a handout. That was the last straw. Dakai roared, blaming that bastard for everything. Feigning concern, Ju wondered if something was wrong, then coldly hung up. He mused on what to buy next. After all, he had already acquired everything imaginable. And yet, the true peak of his existence, the ultimate highlight, still eluded him. Suddenly, an idea struck like a bolt of lightning, his eyes widening in revelation. He grabbed his keys and headed for the door, thinking to himself, how could he have forgotten the most crucial thing of all? Inside a skyscraper that pierced the heavens, a triumphant villainous laugh echoed through the halls. He proudly declared his new penthouse the pinnacle of luxury, a palace in the sky. This, he believed, was the grand highlight he had been searching for. But then he recalled a long-standing tradition, the first duty of any new resident. Holding a customary rice cake, he rang his neighbor's doorbell. From inside, a female voice asked who it was. Ju smoothly introduced himself as the new neighbor, offering the rice cake as a welcome gift. The woman sounded puzzled, asking him to wait. As the door swung open, Ju's charming smile faltered, and then froze solid on his face. It seemed his new apartment wasn't the real prize after all. Standing before him was Sarang. Their eyes locked, and in that instant, the world of the game crashed into reality. This moment? This was the true highlight of his life. Far away in the game's Valley of Ghosts, a lone figure appeared, halting the entire Eurus army in its tracks. With a mere flick of its wrist, the entity unleashed a wave of absolute destruction, turning the Legion into a river of blood. From the carnage, Urus's 3 most powerful champions emerged ready for battle. They spat curses, calling him an arrogant human. But the figure merely sneered, mocking the fools for failing to recognize their true master. 3 grotesque spikes erupted from his back, crackling with dark energy. In a flash, Urus's greatest warriors were impaled and utterly obliterated. The monster began to drain their very essence like a parasite, causing the remaining creatures to scatter in sheer terror. It stood unmoving, its only thought a cold decree all must perish. This time there would be no respawning for Urus's elite. A system window flashed. The target's levels and stats had been successfully absorbed. The data of Urus's champions was now permanently erased from existence. The monster glared the memory of Urus, losing its first head, fueling a burning hatred deep within its core. The horrifying truth was revealed. This creature was the missing head of Urus, reborn with a singular purpose to ravage all of humanity. Its name is Urukon. Meanwhile, back in the real world, the nation's top idol Han Sarang, known in Chrono Life as Amore, appeared. Ju was utterly floored. He couldn't believe it. He was meeting Captain Amore in the flesh for the very first time. Sarang cheerfully accepted the gift, promising to enjoy every bite. Ju stared bewildered until the pieces finally clicked into place. It was the famous idol Han Sarang. The door closed, leaving him speechless in the hallway. Her Nuna asked about the gift, and the idol explained it was just a rice cake from her new neighbor. Sarang paused, a strange feeling of déjà vu washing over her. Shaking it off, she offered the food to her Nuna, who happily thanked her. Neither of them had a clue. Their real-life appearances were a world away from their in-game avatars. Her Nuna urged her to change out of her school uniform, but Sarang groaned, complaining she'd barely been home for 30 minutes. Her Nuna playfully reminded her that the sooner her filming was done, the sooner she could log back into the game. The idol's eyes lit up. She remembered her promise to meet him and immediately dashed off to change her clothes. A knowing smile spread across her Nuna's face as she watched her go. Sarang had clearly met someone special. She couldn't help but wonder what kind of handsome hero had managed to capture the famous idol's heart. At that very moment back in Chrono Life, Ju scanned the eerily empty landscape. Where had all the monsters gone? He wondered if the mobs had somehow fled, but Urus insisted that was completely impossible. Monsters were hard-coded to their territories. They couldn't just run away. It was as if they had been wiped from existence entirely. Ju just shrugged it off. If this hunting ground was a bust, he'd just find another one to make some money. But Urus reminded him of his appointment with that human. Geo checked the time and agreed it was getting close. Since the hunt was a failure, it was time to move on. He grumbled about the long journey ahead, but Urus suddenly froze, sensing a sinister presence lurking nearby. A strange energy. It felt familiar yet utterly malevolent. Deep within the mountains, Elrose, the colossal level 190 snow serpent boss, was being devoured by Urukon's power. Her stats plummeted, her levels vanishing into him. The dragon drooled, but this hunger was far from satisfied. He still wasn't strong enough to utterly crush that human. He had so much further to climb. Just then, the goddess of life descended on angelic wings. She marveled at his progress, musing that it was expected of her dear gluttonous child. Without warning, Urukon's spike impaled her. The goddess gasped in utter shock. Urukon growled that it still wasn't enough, but she looked delicious. And he began to absorb her very essence. The goddess pleaded for him to wait, but she was completely consumed, collapsing to the ground, a formless heap. However, a system window appeared. Absorption failed. The goddess of life reformed, saying she would scold him later because you can't give your mother a scare like that. She even joked, asking if he was going through puberty. Urukon reeled. Was this some kind of illusion? He was certain he had devoured her, but the goddess waved it off as unimportant. The dragon concluded she wasn't food he could consume, demanding to know her true nature since they shared the same scent. The goddess of life simply pointed toward a distant city, telling him a feast was waiting there. She urged him to eat as much as he wanted. A ravenous hunger consumed Urukon. The goddess of life held her sinister smile, watching the dragon descend into a crazed obsession. He unfurled his wings in a trance, declaring he was Urakan born to annihilate humanity. And with that, he flew far away, landing atop a skyscraper in the city. The players below stared in confusion. What was that creature? What was happening? Then, without any warning, a player was impaled by a massive spike and absorbed right in front of his girlfriend. She screamed in pure terror and agony. Then more spikes erupted, slaughtering all the other players, devouring them en masse. A twisted look of ecstasy crossed his face as he drooled, absorbing their levels and stats. The players had become his feast. The starting village, a sanctuary meant for beginners and veterans alike, a place filled with new users and high-level rankers, was completely erased by the dragon. At the Chrono Life company, an employee burst in shouting that they had a problem. They were buried under a flood of user complaints, from customer service calls to bug reports and frantic YouTube live streams. The entire support department was completely paralyzed. The dev team scrambled to assess the damage, but to be attacked and have your character deleted? This had gone too far. Do Gikbai could only complain about the unfolding disaster. He asked sarcastically if Urukon had finally shown up, and if this wasn't all just so much fun. An employee stammered, asking how this could have happened. Yopei ordered them to monitor only 2 entities from now on, the first being Urakan. In the burning city, the dragon stood like a statue. The goddess of life commented that he was incredible, never imagining he would eat everyone and turn the city into a ghost town in an instant. Urakan continued to drool, his hunger unsated. He hissed that it still wasn't enough, demanding she tell him where to find more food. The goddess replied that she didn't know, before her expression shifted into a devious smile. She said she knew of one more, a truly delicious meal for him to absorb. In a dark forest at 7:34 p.m. Sarang trembled with pure rage, remembering what she had said. If he was late, she would take his life. She was certain she had warned that bastard. Glancing aside, she thought her target was taking too long, until she froze, realizing Urakan was right behind her. The girl was a level 24 fighter. The lost head of Urkin was level 999. In another city, Hawkeye walked, complaining to himself. He was the supreme commander of the 5 Guild Alliance, and one of the absolute top rankers in Chrono Life. With his overwhelming charisma, he'd appeared in YouTube interviews and newspapers. He was a man without equal in the game. But after Judgment Day, the World Union Guild was dissolved. Hawkeye, the former supreme commander, fell from grace after taking all the blame. He repeated his own name to himself, clinging to the title he once held. The entire World Guild had once been at his feet. Did they really think he would fall so easily? Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the area. People started screaming that a monster had appeared in the central square. But that village was supposed to be a safe zone. That day, Hawkeye witnessed the impossible, countless players being simply deleted from existence. He hid, watching the horrifying scene and wondering what in the hell that was. This was truly crossing the line. The goddess of life noticed him from afar, but simply kept that chilling smile on her face. The wave of destruction finally faded as the 2 combatants soared into the sky, leaving the ruined village far behind. Hawkeye stared at the system window, his eyes fixed on the notice board. Suddenly, a chilling laugh escaped his lips, a sound teetering on the very edge of insanity. Sarang froze, her eyes wide, the monster before her. This thing? It's not a player, she realized with a jolt of fear. A beast like this in the beginner's hill? It was impossible. Just then the goddess appeared, saying, "A pleasure to finally meet you, Captain Love." Sarang's eyes narrowed. "Do you know Underpants? He's the only one who calls me that," she continued, her voice laced with irritation. "I almost decked him for it. Why would you give your character such a creepy skin?" Luna then asked. "So are you 2 close?" Sarang shrugged. "For now, I'm just messing with him a little. Honestly, I'm not that into him. He's the one who won't stop following me around." The goddess of life's expression darkened for a split second before she plastered on a fake smile. Just moments before, while facing the Hollisan Guild, Luna was already fuming over Jiu speaking with Captain Love. "You are incredibly annoying," the goddess hissed. Sarang, bewildered, could only ask, "What are you talking about?" But before she could even blink, cruel spikes erupted from the ground, impaling her. A blow from Urakan sent her flying as her health bar shattered to 0. Luna's voice was ice. "Please go to hell! You were nothing special." Sarang's body hit the ground, and all that remained was the scarf she always wore. Urakan devoured the player's stats and levels. A satisfied growl rumbled in his chest. "Delicious. That was a fine meal." "Of course it was," Luna sneered. She was a piece of a god after all. Urakan looked puzzled, but the goddess simply glided toward the fallen scarf. "That's not important," she dismissed. "Don't concern yourself with it." She ground the scarf under her heel. "Shall we go find something more delicious to eat?" But a voice cut through the air. "And where do you psychos think you're going?" They both turned to find a face contorted with pure rage. A smile spread across the goddess's face. "Well, well, it's been a long time. How have you been?" Jiu's response was a low growl. "Shut your mouth. Get your filthy pig's foot off that scarf if you don't want to lose your life for a second time." The goddess glanced down at the scarf she was desecrating and stepped away. "Oh, my apologies," she said sweetly. "It was an accident." Jiu's gaze was like frozen steel. His eyes then shifted to Urakan. "You tentacled human. The beating starts with you." Jiu raised his staff high into the air. An explosion of power, greater than anything seen before, erupted from him. The dragon's face was illuminated for a single terrifying instant before everything in its path was utterly annihilated. The beam of pure energy tore through the planet's atmosphere and shot deep into the galaxy. When the smoke cleared, Jiu was still standing. "I'll let the woman go this time," he declared. "Now, scurry along, cockroach." Luna scoffed. "Since when is a cockroach as beautiful as me? Stop pretending to be strong. You can't take my life anyway." "You should finish your own job first before worrying about me," she taunted. "Your real enemy is still right in front of you." Jiu glanced towards the smoke just as Urakan burst forth, hurtling towards him at impossible speed. "My son!" Luna cried out as the dragon's claws ignited and slammed into him with devastating force. The impact triggered a colossal explosion. Iris screamed in despair, calling out for his brother. However, Jiu stood unharmed, a slight frown on his face. "Well, that was a surprise. How are you fine after taking my attack?" "Are you all right?" Iris cried out. The main character simply nodded as his minor wounds regenerated in a flash. Uricon smirked. Why would I be surprised I simply dodged an attack like that? Your pathetic little blow never even touched me. Jiu's eyes narrowed into icy slits. Dodged it, you say? Then I suppose I'll have to swing a little harder next time. Eurus couldn't believe it. What a nasty bluff. Are you saying that last attack wasn't your full power? The protagonist confirmed it. Everything so far has just been a normal strike. As he spoke, an immense aura exploded from him, leaving Uricon paralyzed with terror. Energy surged from Jiu's chest, activating the novice skill, Swordsman's Spirit Master. Until now, he could only use one of his skills. He then looked at Uricon. Listen up, you son of a cockroach. For the very first time, I'm going to use a real skill. If this hits you, you'll be seriously injured, so do your best to dodge it. Jiu gripped his staff with bone-crushing force and ordered the system to activate the skill Continuous Cut. The resulting attack flew it out of the planet's orbit on a direct course for Saturn. And as the attack traveled, memories of Sarang flooded Jiu's mind, his rage boiling over at everything that had just happened. The beam of light seemed to erase Uricon from existence entirely, before continuing its unstoppable journey and piercing straight through Saturn. At first, the planet only trembled from the shockwaves, but then it ignited in a brilliant flash and exploded a cataclysm on a planetary scale. And that was Continuous Cut, the most basic skill of a swordsman. Meanwhile, on another world, a live broadcast was about to begin. A man's face appeared on screen, introducing himself as Hawkeye, the Supreme Commander of the World Union. The chat instantly erupted, calling him a loser and demanding he get off the air. But paradoxically, the more they threatened him, the more viewers flocked to the stream. This was Streamer Mode, a Chrono Life feature that let users broadcast their gameplay. While any player could use it, the function was disabled during the Doomsday event to ensure the operation's secrecy. Because of that critical decision, the identity of the most wanted man remained a mystery to the public. Hawkeye declared he was getting straight to the point. A single player against 3 million users. In reality, such a feat should be impossible. He'd seen the company's official notice denying any bugs or hackers, but he refused to believe their lies. He furiously accused the game company of treating its player base like dogs and pigs. He demanded they investigate immediately, pointing out that the complaint boards were flooded with reports of a monster that permanently deleted characters. He called out to everyone whose character had been erased, urging them to join his stream as he hunted down this very monster. He vowed to expose everything to reveal the truth hidden by that rotten game company once and for all. Then his entire demeanor shifted. In a cheerful voice, he reminded everyone not to forget to subscribe and smash that notification bell. Back on the battlefield, the dust and smoke began to settle. Gio stood completely unharmed, letting out a weary sigh. He was genuinely surprised. That creature Uricon was incredible for having survived the last blow. Jiu couldn't believe it dodged a fatal strike. But even though it was alive, the monster was a wreck of bleeding wounds. The creature then formally introduced itself. I am Uricon, it growled, and my sole purpose is the annihilation of humanity. It revealed its true identity as the mightiest boss, the lost head of Urus, confirmed his fears. The familiar presence he'd sensed was no illusion. He warned Hung to be cautious, suspecting this bastard was the reason monsters vanished from the Valley of Ghosts, which meant Captain Love's tragic death earlier was also his doing. As Jiu absorbed this shocking information, Uricon watched them from afar. I will claim your life, he hissed, lunging forward with his claws extended. Jiu was stunned. Love's character had been completely wiped from existence. In that split second, Uricon unleashed his attack. But our protagonist met the blow head-on, touching the monster's head with his staff and activating non-lethal attack. An immense explosion rocked the entire area. Hawkeye sprinted toward the chaos, yelling for his viewers to stay alert as he moved in for a closer look. Jiu spun his staff with blinding speed, striking Uricon's abdomen again with a non-lethal attack, causing another earth-shattering explosion. Uricon coughed up blood, groaning in agony, yet it still tried to push forward. Jiu simply prepared his next assault. This time, he unleashed the burst attack version. A barrage of energy blasts hammered the monster's body relentlessly. Jiu continued his onslaught without a moment's rest. A final cataclysmic explosion erupted, and Uricon spewed even more blood. Hidden beneath a tree, Hawkeye witnessed the entire spectacle. The other players nearby were in awe, wondering who could possibly be fighting at such a high level. Some felt a strange sense of familiarity. Hawkeye, however, was frozen in pure shock. As the smoke finally cleared, Jiu's face was revealed to the world. It was him, the man from the wanted poster. Everyone was utterly speechless. This was the monster who caused the Doomsday incident. A flood of memories hit Hawkeye, his crushing defeat, the chaos, the despair. It was all that bastard's fault. He couldn't believe it. Of all the places, of all the times he'd found his mortal enemy right here. Without a second's hesitation, he drew his bow, aiming directly at Jiu. The arrow flew true, but instead of hitting its target, it shattered a piece of Uricon's horn. The onlookers stared in confusion, wondering what that was all about. Suddenly, a message popped up in the stream's chat. Someone's character had been restored. Moments later, a flood of similar reports poured in. Hawkeye couldn't believe his eyes. This should be impossible. The souls the monster had stolen were returning to their rightful owners, though, with reduced levels and skills. Covered in wounds, Urakan's level plummeted to 723. Gio watched, confused by the sudden change. Just moments ago, it was dodging his attacks with ease. But now the monster had become noticeably slower. Urus explained the phenomenon. The energy that bastard had absorbed was now flowing back to its original hosts. Meanwhile, back at the company headquarters, a team leader finally understood the situation. He explained that the player data was never deleted, merely transferred into Urakan's horns. A developer named Diag was shocked. How could he not know this? The team leader simply replied that he was in charge of the design team. Back in the game, a wide grin spread across Ju's face. Is this for real? He thought. So if I just beat the hell out of this bastard, Captain Amori will come back too. At the mention of that name, Urakan was startled. It grit its teeth in pure rage and charged, screaming, "You are nothing but insignificant food." Ju unleashes a relentless barrage, a storm of non-lethal strikes. Every single blow lands true, inflicting overwhelming damage upon the beast. The system announces another stolen soul's return. Urakan's power plummets once more down to level 389. On Hawkeye's livestream, the viewer count explodes. The chat erupts, calling him the man who started Doomsday, a notorious player killer. But now, because of him, they were getting their very characters back. Hawkeye's jaw hangs open, utterly stunned by the spectacle. He lowers his bow, abandoning any thought of attacking the main character. In her penthouse, Sarang watches the stream on her phone, already dressed for her performance. The viewers are going wild, cheering Ju's name. Sarang stares equally dumbfounded as memories flood her mind. Of a time Ju would chase after her, begging her to carry him in the game. She can't help but marvel at how much he's changed. Back in the game, the dust from the onslaught begins to settle. Urakan is forced to his knees, his body completely ravaged by the merciless non-lethal assault. His stats have been shattered now, equal to a mere level 180 player. Ju closes the distance in a flash. Urus observes that every ounce of energy has been drained from the beast, forcing it back to its original state. I can see that, Ju replies, pondering the final blow. Urakan can only drool, paralyzed, mumbling his own name. But suddenly, he lunges forward, a final desperate spike impaling our hero. It's a direct hit through the chest. Everyone watching the broadcast freezes in absolute shock. Urus's jaw drops in horror as Urakan lets out a triumphant, blood-curdling roar. I am the creature destined to annihilate all of humanity. Urakan bellows as Ju's levels begin to drain away like a leech. In a panic, Urus screams for his young master, watching in horror as the main character is grotesquely torn in half. Urakan continues to devour his target's power. What remained of Ju crumbled to the ground like a dry twig, and the monster's horn began to regenerate. He erupted into maniacal laughter, shouting, "Delicious! I've never had such a fine meal!" His level skyrockets to 999, but Urakan declares it isn't enough. My hunger will never be satisfied, he roars, for I am Urakan the Gluttonous. Urus crawls to what's left of his friend, kneeling beside the remains. Tears stream down his face as he cries out for his young. But then, the hidden skill healing factor activates. The severed parts begin to violently regenerate. A searing pain erupts from Urakan's belly as it begins to swell and crack. A face stretches out from the monster's flesh, turning to give him an icy stare. The face cracks a chilling smile that fills Urakan with pure, unadulterated terror. The creature howls in agony, while the main character's disembodied laughter echoes through the air. Deekip's cigar slips and falls to the floor. What is that disgusting thing? The viewers cry out. From high above, Luna watches the entire scene completely captivated. Ju's haunting laughter continues. Now this is fun, he says. You look just like an earthworm Urakan. Is that really you? Urus stammers. The main character confirms his terrifying return. Urakan grinds his teeth in fury, screaming that Jiu is a child born solely to destroy mankind, once again proclaiming himself Urakan the Gluttonous. But his declaration is cut short. Jiu begins to absorb the monster's bloated stomach, using the very matter to reconstruct his own body. His form begins to warp and reshape itself, shocking Urus to his core. Urakan can only groan as he is sucked into the vortex. Jiu steps onto solid ground, completely reborn. The enhanced skill healing factor recovery ensures all damage taken is instantly restored. With the healing factor's activation, all absorbed cells are forcibly returned to their original owner. Jiu muses on the pointlessness of the monster's attack, since most of his own cells had fused with Urakan, making Jiu a part of the beast's body, reducing him to nothing more than an organ. But now that entire process was reversing. Urakan himself was being consumed by the healing factor, and Jiu simply expelled what was left of him with a burp. As a result, a hidden skill is acquired. Gluttony. It allows the user to absorb a target's level and stats by consuming them. Luna descends, asking if the show is over. That wasn't what I expected, she comments, but it was quite entertaining to watch. Jiu notes her cheerfulness even after he destroyed her son. The girl explains that Urakan was evil, and it was all metaphorical anyway. She hadn't actually given birth to him. And for his information, she was 21 years old, the exact same age as him. Stunned, Jiu asks how she could possibly know that. Ignoring his question, Luna simply summons her scepter and gestures to the side. Giving Jiu one last cryptic smile, she tears open a dimensional rift. Who knows? She asks playfully. Immense claws rip through the portal, revealing the hand of some colossal otherworldly creature. Jiu is left completely speechless. Luna gracefully steps onto the creature's hand. Well, see you around, she says, leaving him with one final mocking title. Mr. Music Loser. Meanwhile, at the corporation, Dakbei's cigar falls from his slack-jawed mouth. His orders were simple. Handle the situation by posting a reward event notice, and continue the surveillance he'd previously assigned. A smirk played on his lips, finding the Urican incident rather entertaining. He issued a new directive. From now on, all monitoring would focus on just two targets. The first was the man once known as Urican, and the other was Luna. Meanwhile, back in the starting village, the square erupted in cheers. Players raised their hands high, chanting Jiu's name, hailing him as a true hero. Trumpets blared a grand fanfare, calling for all to come and praise their champion. But Jiu could only clutch his head in agony. Who on earth could have leaked his identity? His grand plan to hide his overwhelming power was now completely in shambles. Hawkeye's live broadcast had skyrocketed to 235,000 viewers, and clips of the epic battle were spreading like wildfire across the web. But amidst the roaring praise, a lone voice cut through the noise. An elf shouted for them to stop their nonsense, declaring that bastard would never be a hero. He pointed an accusing finger, branding Jiu a mass murderer, a monster who had wiped out 3 million players in the blink of an eye. To praise the game's most wanted criminal, he screamed, was absolute madness. But Hawkeye swiftly interrupted him, retorting, Isn't killing players just like deleting a character? Stop spouting such nonsense. With that single broadcast, Hawkeye became a star streamer, turning out to be the biggest beneficiary of the entire incident. Someone in the crowd noticed Jiu was alone. He doesn't have a guild. He should join the Justice Guild. Instantly, the crowd erupted with offers. Guilds from all over begged the hero to join their ranks, promising him the finest treatment imaginable. Overwhelmed by the sudden attention, Jiu panicked and bolted, fleeing the ravenous crowd, desperate to recruit him. Urus found it hilarious. Looks like Hyungjim is finally famous. You should have revealed your power long ago. Jiu, completely annoyed, told him to shut his mouth. In his frantic escape, he suddenly slammed his head against something solid and golden. Stumbling back, he looked up to see what he'd hit, only to be met with a full-body statue of himself. The expressions on both his and Iris' faces were pure horror. What in the world is that? He stammered. Please tell me that's not me. But Urus could only confirm the awful truth. It's you, Hung Nim. A voice boomed from behind. So, do you like it? It was Wong appearing with his entire guild, all of them wearing nothing but underwear and a cloak. It was worth every penny to create this tribute, the man declared. Your performance was magnificent. Just as I thought, you really are that guy. Wong then leaned in closer. You're the one who caused the doomsday, aren't you? He explained that ever since that day, he was so deeply moved that he had to have the statue built. Jiu frantically denied it, utterly baffled by this man's reaction. Besides, why was everyone in their underwear? The chairman proudly explained that they'd sold everything they owned to build it, as the statue had cost over 20 billion. Just then, a shout echoed from the crowd. We found him! The hero is over here! Jiu was off like a shot, once more yelling back at the old man. And don't you dare follow me! Meanwhile, in a quiet penthouse, Hansarang sat on her bed, her head bowed low as she replayed everything that had happened. It was all so obvious now, the monsters disappearing the moment she opened her eyes. The bear rabbit that was obliterated in a single blow, and even her gauntlet stolen by the Hallison Guild. He must have hunted the guild down himself, recovered her weapon, and secretly returned it to her. But why? Why go through all that trouble? Why did he pretend to be so weak? Why did he deceive her? A wave of dread washed over her as a painful memory surfaced. Her precious teddy bear destroyed on the floor. A little girl crying in front of her father, terrified of everything. The weight of his deception came crashing down on her. Her hand trembled as she reached for her glasses, wanting to tear them off. In the end, though, she placed them back on her face, her body racked with tremors as she sat alone on the bed. Later in the city, Jiu wore a look of utter exhaustion. Looks like things have finally died down, he sighed. This must be what it's like to be famous. But Iris warned him, don't look now, but people are still staring at you. Jiu frowned. It felt like they were forgetting something. Something important was nagging at him, but he just couldn't remember what it was. And then he saw her. Hansarang was standing right in front of him. There you are, he called out, a smile on his face. No wonder I felt like something was missing. It's because you weren't around. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Who was this girl the hero was calling out to? No one recognized her, though she seemed strangely familiar. At that moment, Jiu remembered the scarf. I got this for you, he said gently, wrapping it around her neck. He started to explain that he got it after defeating Urakan, but quickly corrected himself, stammering, I just picked it up, found it on the ground. His clumsy lie, however, only fueled her inner turmoil. A tremor of rage shot through her. "Don't make me laugh," she hissed. "That's not true. Why are you lying to me?" Ju looked completely lost. "What do you mean I don't know how to lie?" Hanzarang trembled, gritting her teeth as anxiety took over. "Underpants," she called him. "You were the one who delivered rice cakes to my house, weren't you?" Ju was utterly lost, wondering what on earth she was talking about. But then the memory hit him like a lightning bolt. The moment he handed her the rice cake, a wave of shock crashed over him. It can't be," he stammered. Captain Love was Han Sarang. As the world watched the drama unfold, she confirmed the unbelievable truth. "That's my identity in the real world." Han Sarang's journey started with a pure and simple love for singing. "Are you out of your mind?" her Nuna questioned. "You can't just reveal your identity in front of all those people. Have you completely lost it?" In an instant, she was the #1 trending topic. A media firestorm erupted with journalists clamoring for a single quote. On top of that, you made your character look exactly like you. You should have thought of that before you even started. Customization is a feature in the game meant to alter a character's appearance. But in this virtual reality, the law demands that all players log in with their real-life faces. Her Nuna shrieked that she should have at least changed her hairstyle. It was a miracle her identity hadn't been exposed until now. "And what's the big deal?" Han Sarang retorted fiercely. "I wasn't even trying to hide it. Is playing a game a sin? Why should I have to hide who I am? I play this to have fun, so I shouldn't care what other people think. It's because I'm terrified your real personality will be exposed." "Have you forgotten?" the Nuna pressed. "You've been putting on an act for the entire nation." That was the last straw. A furious fire lit in Han Sarang's eyes. "I never wanted to pretend in the first place," she screamed. "You're the one who forced me. I told you from the very beginning I didn't want to lie. I hate deceiving my fans." With that, she slammed her bedroom door shut. Her Nuna just grumbled, muttering about how stubborn that girl was. Han Sarang snatched her virtual reality headset and quickly put it on. The system whirred to life, initiating an iris scan. As the machine worked, the girl's trembling began to subside. The system announced, "Authentication complete. Connecting to Chrono Life in the past." In a sunlit schoolyard, a much younger Han Sarang hummed a sweet melody about drinking from a mountain spring. At dawn, a rabbit rubs its eyes awake, but instead of washing its face, all it does is drink. Han Sarang's musical genius blossomed at an impossibly early age, leading to her stunning debut in the industry when she was only 5. A genius, a prodigy, a singer sent from the heavens. They even called her a reincarnation. Her debut was more glorious than anyone could have imagined. However, as if waiting for the perfect moment to strike, tragedy descended. Her talent, a flower meant to bloom magnificently, was trampled by greedy corporate adults. And the very people who should have protected her were her own parents. The reason, of course, was money. An ugly, all-too-common tale in the entertainment industry. A tragedy that shattered a young child's life, turning her into a tragic character in some cheap, pathetic drama. And just like that, Han Sarang was cruelly overworked. Music programs, interviews, variety shows, and countless commercial shoots stole her childhood. The only reason she could withstand a brutal schedule that would break most adults was, ironically, because of her parents, who would coldly ask, "What's the problem? You can do better than this." So even while crying, even while terrified, Han Sarang would force a bright, painful smile onto her face. But a child's small body could only endure so much. It happened on stage during the year-end special, with the highest ratings of all time. She was preparing for the show's spectacular final performance. But under the crushing pressure at the very end of the show, the little girl collapsed, vomiting on the stage as the entire nation watched in horror. The girl began to cough violently, calling out for her parents in absolute fear. But they didn't respond. Instead, they covered their faces, their expressions twisted with anger. Seeing their reaction, the sick little girl fell into an even deeper state of panic. And in that single moment, a scar was carved into her soul that would never truly heal. Back in a serene field, Han Sarang reflected on her past. She remembered the protagonist wrapping the scarf around her neck and instinctively clutched it. Then Ju's voice cut through the silence. "I finally found you!" The girl spun around, startled. Our main character explained that a gut feeling had led him there, asking why she had suddenly vanished. He admitted he'd been worried sick. In response, Han Sarang coldly told him to get lost. Ju was completely baffled by her reaction. He asked what was wrong, and Iris bluntly commented, "Well, she seems angry." Our hero didn't get it. She was furious because he deceived her, hiding his true power. "What should I do?" Ju asked, as Iris advised him to apologize since lying was wrong. The protagonist lets out a slight cough to get her attention, calls out her name, and offers a sincere apology. He pleads that tricking her was never his true intention, that he was simply waiting for the perfect moment to confess everything. But his excuses mean nothing. Han Sarang's hands tighten around the scarf, a gift now tainted by his lies. She rises, her voice trembling with betrayal, asking if he truly believes a hollow apology can erase the deception that came to him so easily. Ju's mind races, trying to understand her cryptic words. But his confusion twists into sheer terror. A monstrous shriek echoes from above. A griffin descends like a shadow of death, its massive talons snatching her away. A desperate roar tears from Jiu's throat as he watches the beast ascend, carrying her into the sky. A man sits atop the griffin, his voice laced with mock concern. Did I grab her too hard? We wouldn't want her to faint. Urus freezes, his face pale with shock. He knows that man. Jiu's voice cracks with rage. Who the hell are you? Bring her back. The kidnapper smirks, offering a fake apology. My apologies, Mr. Hero. Certain individuals wish to meet Ms. Han-Sarong. I'll just be borrowing her for a while. A curse escapes Jiu's lips as he summons his staff. But Urus screams a warning. Youngnim, don't! That man, his power is on another level. He doesn't listen. Fueled by fury, Jiu unleashes an upward strike. A colossal blast of energy erupts, surging towards the heavens. But the man on the griffin merely sighs bored. He activates his ability. 8 sights and 8 mirrors. With the 5th sight reflection, he effortlessly turns the protagonist's own devastating attack right back at him. Jiu is frozen in his attack stance, his eyes wide with disbelief. His own power comes screaming back at him. There's no time to react as the energy slams into him head-on. The resulting explosion is cataclysmic. The shockwave obliterates the landscape, tearing a hole straight through the atmosphere itself. Everything to Jiu's right is vaporized, including his entire arm. Urus screams, Youngnim, are you all right? The main character suffered a fatal blow, but his healing factor instantly kicks into overdrive. In a grotesque display of power, a new arm regenerates from the stump. Jiu glares up his eyes, burning with pure, unadulterated rage. Urus pleads, do you see now he's not human? The man's name is Habayak, and just like Urus, he is in existence. Jiu grits his teeth. An existence shouldn't be this weak. But then, Habayak's mirror shatters. The kidnapper's smug expression vanishes, replaced by genuine surprise. A slow, wicked smile spreads across his face. Incredible. You're the first one to break my defense, since him. Even so, he declares, his voice turning cold. A mere human has no right to possess the fragment of a god. Meanwhile, in a hidden tower, deep within a forest, Han-Sarong awakens with a gasp, scrambling backwards in fear. Panic grips her as she demands answers. What's going on? Who are you? Where am I? Habayak tells her to calm down, assuring her he means no harm. There are people who wish to see you, Miss Han-Sarong. As she asks who 2 figures emerge from the shadows, the moment she sees them, pure terror floods her face. She recoils instinctively, a strangled gasp escaping her lips. She knows them. They are her father and her mother. Her mind flashes back to that day on stage, how they hid their faces, abandoning her to the wolves. After that hellish day, Han-Sarong quit her career as a singer forever. But there were those who refused to let her go. Her mother's hand cracking across her face. These were the people she called parents. They forbade her retirement, forcing her back into the spotlight. Her mother's twisted words echoed in her ears. Don't you understand we're only doing this because we love you? And so for years, the girl lived like a puppet, unable to escape. But when the incident with her father cut off their money, leaving Sarang deeply traumatized, they crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. They were no longer parents. They were monsters. They sold their own daughter. It was a miracle she managed to escape their clutches. Her only refuge from that nightmare was the sanctuary of a police station. Finally, Han-Sarong was freed from her personal hell. The court granted a restraining order. Her parents' appeal was of course denied. Under the protection of the law, she was finally truly free. But the damage was already done. The ordeal had shattered her spirit, leaving her with a crippling trauma of betrayal and lies. She became a recluse, locking herself away from the world. Her only escape was the virtual reality of online games, a life spent alone in a dark room. Her eyesight worsened from the constant screen time, forcing her to wear glasses. And because of those dark memories, she feels an overwhelming anxiety in the real world without them. The story of how she finally stepped outside again is for another time. For now, we return to the present. To Han-Sarong, trapped with her parents. She trembles uncontrollably. The restraining order. How they explain they saw an article about her playing Chrono Life and dived into the game themselves. Even so, finding you would have been difficult, they admit. Fortunately, we had some help this time. Habayak just smiles. I'll leave you to your reunion. And with that, he vanishes without a trace. Sarang's mother coos, oh, look how much you've grown. We've only seen you on TV. It's so good to see you in person, even if it's just a game. She actually laments how cruel the world is for separating them. Han-Sarong begins to break down, grinding her teeth in pure anguish. Finally, she snaps, what do you want if there's nothing I'm logging out? Her mother's voice cracks, crying out that they are truly sorry. She pleads that they've wanted to apologize for so long, admitting their words that day were unforgivable. She begs, asking if Sarang could find it in her heart to forgive them, wanting nothing more than to be a happy family once again, just like in the old days. Meanwhile, Habayak strolls confidently outside the tower, when suddenly his griffin rears up on high alert. A shadow fell over him. It was Jiu. Habayak scoffs, noting the secrecy of this place, and sneers that Urus must have guided him. He begins to offer an explanation, but Jiu cuts him off with a single command. Shut your mouth. With ice in his voice, Gio declares this is their final battle, and even victory won't be sweet until he has claimed his rightful vengeance. Habak just sighs then. With a casual snap of his fingers, he declares there's nothing to be done. His griffin lets out a piercing shriek and lunges toward them. Gio narrows his eyes. So the bird comes first, does it? But his eyes widened in disbelief. It wasn't one griffin, but two. He rubs his eyes shocked by the multiplying beasts, wondering if this was some kind of copy-paste glitch. Habak unleashes his fourth vision. Photocopy, and suddenly a legion of tens of thousands of griffins descends upon Jiwoo. What in the hell is this? He roars, swinging his staff and unleashing a cataclysmic explosion that obliterates everything in its path. But the debris hangs frozen in the air, and from the very dust and fragments, new griffins begin to reform before his eyes. Who is this guy? Ju demands. Eurus explains grimly, that's photocopy, the fourth ability of Habak's mirror. He issues a dire warning, revealing that the mirror's complete power is known as the 8 visions. Ju admits he's never heard of it. Eurus explains there are 8 mirrors in total, and each one unlocks a new vision from the 1st to the 8th each, with a different terrifying effect. For example, the ability he'd used earlier was Reflection, a skill that reflects all physical and magical attacks. Ju can't help but complain, that's completely broken. The devs need to balance this game. Eurus gives him a look, finding it's almost absurd to hear him talk about balance. In reality, the company never cared about fairness. Habak isn't a user. He's a world boss that must be conquered. All the while, Habak simply stares in silence. Gio mocks him sarcastically. What a twisted game letting a boss wander around pretending to be human. He mutters about what kind of sick mind designed this, but he's cut short by a griffin attacking him from behind. Caught off guard, the impact forces blood from Ju's lips. Instantly, the other griffins unleash a storm of fireballs converging on our hero. Yet, despite the overwhelming assault, Ju remains standing tall amidst the inferno, smirking that they almost scared him for a moment. He rises staff in hand and unleashes his skill, Continuous Cut. The horde of griffins before him instantly dissipates into nothingness. Habak, however, just sighs once more. It's useless, he taunts. No matter how many you defeat with photocopy, I can create an infinite army. As if to prove his point, new griffins materialize from thin air, growling at the main character. He's not bluffing, Ju realizes. To win this fight, he has to shatter that mirror itself. Habak, in turn, just maintains his wicked smile. Gio unleashes Continuous Cut, again wiping out every single creature. But the moment the griffins are reborn, he unleashes another devastating barrage of his skill. He repeats this action dozens of times until the very planet begins to scream. Beams of light erupt from the ground, the world trembling with the force of each attack. And at last, a tiny crack appears on the mirror. Habak's composure shatters his mind, reeling. Who in the world is this man? Ju simply points his staff at him, a confident smirk on his face. So it's finally breaking, is it? I heard you were just like Urus. He taunts, a complete weakling. Habak retorts that he isn't weak. You're the one who's the monster? I never expected power like this. Gio's eyes turned cold. Wipe that disgusting smirk off your face. It reminds me of a cockroach. Now answer me if you don't want to be sent straight to hell. Why did you kidnap Captain Amor? And what did you mean by the peace of a god? Habak hesitates, saying he's not sure he should answer. Gio's voice drops to a lethal whisper. Would you rather die? Don't even think about moving. Habak glances at the fractured mirror. It's nearly broken, but I think it has enough power for one last use. Something was approaching from behind them. Ju wondered if it was another one of those bird heads, but what he saw next sent a chill down his spine. A perfect copy of himself stood before him, his staff replicated flawlessly right down to his underwear. Ju stared, completely dumbfounded. His voice was a choked whisper. My opponent is myself. The duplicate was a perfect mirror image. The copy raised its staff and unleashed. Reverse Continuous Cut. A storm of inverted slashes rushed toward him. Ju wore a look of grim acceptance, making no move to defend himself as the attack washed over him. His health bar plummeted, all the way down to 0. With that, a cataclysmic explosion engulfed the entire battlefield. Watching from a safe distance, Habak commented, incredible. If I had known he was this powerful, he mused, I would have just copied him from the very beginning. Eurus's roar echoed across the wasteland. Habak, what is your purpose? Habak merely greeted the dragon, saying it had been a while and offered a fake apology for being so busy. He then added with a venomous smile, You know, Urus, you look much cuter than you did before. Enough games, Eurus growled, appearing right in front of Habak. Stop changing the subject. Did he send you? Habak simply chuckled, an arrogant smile playing on his lips. My dear Eurus, could I perhaps pinch those cheeks just once? The dragon's insult was cut short. Suddenly the ground began to writhe. Pieces of flesh pulsed with a sinister energy, twisting and merging into a horrifying new form. What in the world is that thing? Habak demanded. But a cold dread washed over Urus. Don't tell me, it's happening all over again. A system notification flashed. The healing factor had been activated, and Jiu's health was instantly restored to 100%. He stepped forward fully recovered, yet his body still twitched like a character from a horror film. Suddenly, the newly formed creature called out to Heibash, startling the villain to his core. Jiu's perfect copy now stood behind him. The real Jiu turned slowly and said, "There you are, you damn imposter." The copy just stared back, its eyes cold and empty. Urus commented, "That clone looks even more fake than the original." But Jiu just snapped back, "Shut up." The clone tightened its grip on its staff and unleashed a devastating downward slash against our protagonist. A terrifying blast of raw energy tore through the air at incredible speed. Jiu merely sighed at the predictable attack. Returning to his true form, he summoned his own staff, countering with a powerful upward slash. The two forces collided in a violent explosion. Everyone watching this battle was completely stunned. It was as if two rival gods were tearing the very planet apart. As the smoke began to clear, the two Geos shot towards each other, gritting their teeth and letting out a unified primal scream. Their powers clashed as their staves met in a blinding flurry of strikes. The shockwaves from each blow reverberated across the entire area. The protagonist poured all of his strength into his assault, while his copy mirrored him perfectly blow for devastating blow. Simultaneously, they activated their skills, unleashing the continuous slash once more. The attacks erupted, completely devastating the western forest, as their blue and red auras of power collapsed into one another. Jiu channeled immense force, reliving that same sensation from before, as the clone unleashed its full power in return. With one final furious roar, their attacks collided, vaporizing everything in a world-shattering blast. For a moment, both Jiu and his copy seemed shocked by the result of their clash. As their combined power ripped a crater in the earth, Habak and Urus were forced to shield their faces. The water god muttered, "They both struck each other's heads. The impact must have destroyed them both." But Urus cried out for his Hyungnim. The smoke cleared to reveal a grotesque sight. Both the copy and the protagonist were writhing on the ground, as shapeless masses, their healing factors desperately working to make them human again. Habach commented dryly, "Well, they aren't completely insane. It seems this is the only way they know how to recover." In an instant, both returned to their normal forms and charged their forces, colliding once more. An explosion of blue and red light engulfed the entire mountain as the spectators watched from a safe distance. Urus had finally had enough. "It's time you answered me, Habach. Why are you hindering Hyungnim, and why did you kidnap Captain Love?" Habach's condescending smile never faded. "Just as I thought. You truly know nothing, Urus. You should pay more attention." He continued, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Not even that person can act carelessly around me, the strongest being in Chrono Life." This was the proud dragon Urus. Habach then turned the tables. "Now I'd like to ask you something. Why is it that you, who has never shown interest in anything in this world, are accompanying a mere human?" "Why?" Urus repeated the question with a scoff. "You still haven't figured it out." His old colleague simply shook his head. "You've misunderstood many things, but rest assured I have no quarrel with your Mr. Hero. My objective is only the peace of God." Urus questioned him. "Are you talking about Captain Love?" Habich burst out laughing. "What nonsense, as if a mere human could ever possess such value." Hanzarang was merely the owner of the peace of God. Meanwhile, in a hidden tower, Hanzarang's mother apologized to her. "I'm so very sorry," she said softly. "I hope you can accept." Her words trailed off when she noticed her daughter's hands were empty. She fell silent for a few seconds and then suddenly grabbed her daughter's hand with a desperate look. "My beautiful daughter, Hanzarang, where are the gauntlets of silence?" Back on the mountain, Urus was in disbelief. "The peace of God? And it only costs 10 million? The price is unimportant," Habash replied dismissively. "Soon the item will be accessible to normal players. The items in Chrono Life are all divided by rank, you see. First, there are the lowly normal rank items. Second comes the rare rank. After that is the unique rank, and finally the Newman rank." Urus had also heard rumors of an even higher rank, a transcendent rank, but he had never seen one with his own eyes, and he recalled that they were all in Ju's possession. Habash continued, "But regardless of strength or rarity, the peace of God is very special. The transcendent rank is an exception, of course, especially for the gods of this world." Meanwhile, Luna was watching the entire exchange from a distance. She commented to herself, "Mr. Habak really spilled all the secrets. A man who can't keep his mouth shut isn't attractive at all, is he?" Beside her, a god casually munched on a sandwich, revealing this was old news. Everyone was already aware, since Luna herself had been hunting for pieces of God since that night at the Halasan Guild. The piece in question, the Gauntlets of Silence. Luna smirked. "Just as I thought you knew all along." The god wondered aloud if she truly believed Urakan could absorb a piece of God. The goddess of life confessed, "I tried to remain calm, but this result is far beyond what I imagined." Suddenly, the battlefield erupted in a cataclysmic explosion as Jiu and his clone's powers collided. The heavy toll of battle began to weigh on Jiu, but his clone remained flawless. Then, with a lightning-fast strike, the copy attacked. Jiu saw it coming, but it was too late. A crimson arc carved across his chest, sending him flying. "Hyungnim!" Urus screamed in horror. Habayak observed coolly that their stats and control were identical, but there was one fatal difference between them: the chilling gap between a human user and an AI bot. Unlike the hero, the copy felt no fatigue and would make no mistakes. With this, the tide of battle was sure to turn. As Urus soared toward his master, Habayak could only let out a heavy sigh. Ju's body dissolved into a puddle on the ground, only to instantly reform a gaping wound on his chest. Urus immediately landed at his side. Activating his healing factor, the wound began to mend as he wiped the blood from his mouth. He then roared with laughter. "Damn, this is fun!" Urus and Habayak stared in disbelief at his reaction. "It's been so boring," Ju explained, ending every fight with a single blow. "I have no intention of killing this phony," he declared. "I just want to keep playing." "What are you talking about?" Urus cried. "You were in serious danger." As the clone charged again, Ju just laughed at the very idea. He stood his ground, unmoving against the coming onslaught, and calmly stated, "There are 2 ways to finish this bastard." That single declaration shocked everyone from Urus to the gods themselves. Their weapons clashed, unleashing a shockwave that tore the landscape asunder. Urus shielded his face from the blast, while Luna and the gods simply braced themselves against the raw impact. When the smoke finally cleared, Habayak mused aloud. "He mentioned 2 methods. I'm curious which one he'll choose." Luna, taking another bite of her sandwich, simply said, "He's bluffing." Compared to other bosses in Chrono Life, Habayak was in a league of his own, and his 8 visions ability was just plain broken. He wasn't a boss designed to be fought alone, and she doubted Ju could win. That's when Ju revealed his first method: simple. I destroy the planet. Destroy the house. Luna and the god froze, their casual demeanors vanishing in an instant. But our main character explained that if he blew up the planet and ended the game like last time, Captain Love would just return to the starting village, and this fake would vanish. However, he added, "I'm not in the mood for that. I'd rather try something new." The 2 deities breathed a quiet sigh of relief. Meanwhile, Dakbei was frantically biting his nails, begging him to get on with the second method. He was clearly the most anxious person watching this unfold. Back in the hidden tower, a mother asked her daughter, "Where are the gauntlets of silence? Be honest, and I promise I won't get mad." The father interjected, snarling that Habach would give them a fortune for that single item. "We're not asking for much," he sneered. "For bringing you into this world, you owe us this." Han Sarang could only whisper, "I don't know. I lost them a while ago." Her father advanced on her, his voice low and menacing. "Did you hide them?" She desperately tried to deny it, but her words were cut short by a brutal slap that sent her reeling across the floor. "You ungrateful brat," he roared. "We put up with you when you ran away. You were a complete waste of money. Did you forget who did everything for you?" "Where is my money?" Back on the battlefield, a sinister magic circle flared to life beneath Ju's feet. "What is that?" Urus gasped. "A new skill from the rookie master." Even Habayak seemed surprised, but the ancient dragon appeared to recognize that ominous violet energy. Ju activated the power he'd absorbed from Irakin, and a grotesque tentacle burst from his body. It was the sin of gluttony emerging from his very mouth. As Urus wondered if they could escape, the tentacle pierced the clone's back and began to absorb it. Habak's voice taunted, "Was this your grand plan? Did you really think my clones couldn't copy the skill of gluttony?" Instantly, a second tentacle erupted from the clone's mouth, striking Jiu in the chest. Both began to devour each other. Habayak explained the grim reality: the opponent was a perfect mirror. As such, it also possessed gluttony on top of the healing factor and infinite battery. Jiu's strategy had failed spectacularly. Perhaps he should have tried the first method after all. But then Jiu commanded, "Equip reserve battery." Habak was confused, but before he could process the words, a stinger pierced him through the chest. Jiu revealed with a grin, "My second attack was always aimed at the main body." The tentacle began to absorb Habayak, who realized the truth far too late. The attempt to consume the clone had been a feint from the very beginning. As its body grotesquely warped, the clone flickered and dissolved into nothingness. Jiu smirked. "Just as I thought. If a fatal blow strikes the original, the copy vanishes. It was a good fight, you bastard. But now, it's over." Habit was being devoured without mercy, but with a surge of defiance, he severed the encroaching tentacle. Jiu's eyes widened in shock. As Habak bled, so did the mirror. He clutched the artifact, roaring, "You wretched creature! To think I'd be pushed this far. It pains me, but I have no choice. I must relinquish the peace of God, the gauntlets of silence." The deity was stunned, questioning if the peace of God hadn't already been consumed by Urukon, and if Habak was truly unaware. Luna shook her head, admitting she had kept the truth from him. Habak soared into the sky, declaring his retreat. Geo pulled back his tentacle and sneered, "And just where do you think you're going?" "Don't dress it up, you're just a loser running away." "You're not wrong," Habak conceded. "The defeated should indeed flee with their tail between their legs." With those words, he hurled the mirror toward Jiu, who now possessed the artifact imbued with one of the 8 visions. Jiu couldn't understand the gesture, and Urus was shocked that Habeki would simply hand over such a treasure. "Take it," Habak commanded. "Consider it your prize for clearing the raid. It's not an official reward, but a personal gift for sparing my life." Jiu was skeptical. "Why, I could get far better loot by ending you right now." True, Hebek admitted. But for that mirror to function, its original owner needs to be alive. That's why sparing me is the smarter play. And with a final farewell, he vanished. Ownership of Habek's mirror officially transferred, and Jiu was now its master. But Jiu simply shrugged, thinking it was all meaningless. After all, his true objective was never the mirror. It was Captain Love. Meanwhile, inside a hidden tower, Hanserang's father rained blows down upon her. He screamed, calling her an ungrateful wretch, accusing her of causing all their suffering. He demanded she obey her parents without question, branding her a rebellious child, and roared if she'd forgotten who gave her life. The girl collapsed to the floor, her head bowed in submission. The old man sighed, feigning exhaustion. Then a wicked smile twisted his lips. "That's right," he cackled. "At this rate, we won't even need the gauntlets of silence. We can just take the money directly from him." Inside, Hanserang felt something snap. She couldn't endure this any longer. Her mother stepped forward, her voice sickly sweet. "This is a game, dear. That little protective order from the courts has no power here." There was no escape. As Hanserang's fists trembled, her mother cooed. "Our family will be together, forever." But in her heart, the girl screamed a silent plea for someone, anyone, to save her from this living hell. "Are you people morons?" A voice cut through the tension like a blade. "She can just log out." Every head snapped in his direction. The mother shrieked, "Who are you? How dare you interfere in our family matters?" "The underpants guy," Hanserang thought, recognizing him instantly. Her father knew him too. You're that guy from the video. That useless punk who was all over my sarang?" He roared, but a swift blow cut his sentence short. Jiwoo had used a skill and attack that wouldn't kill. "You know I may be rude," Jiwoo began, "but I always try to be polite to my elders. Selfish old relics like you, however, are the exception." Urus, watching from afar, recalled that Jiwoo was just as disrespectful to the elders of the Hollison Guild. "We're Sarang's parents," the father howled, getting back to his feet. "Don't make me laugh," Ju shot back. "What kind of parents beat their own child and shake her down for cash?" The mother jumped in. "Ask Sarang yourself. We're her real parents." Jiwoo sighed, deeply annoyed. "I hate it when people drag their real-life drama into the game. What's the point of playing if you're just gonna act like this?" The mother sneered. "This is what's wrong with kids who play games these days." Jiwoo ignored them, turning to Captain Love. "And you, why are you just taking it? Why are you just sitting there and letting them beat you?" Her eyes lifted to meet his. "Don't hold back. Unleash everything. You're the highest level player in this room." Sarang was stunned by his words. "But they really are my parents." "How pathetic," he scoffed. "Bringing your real-life issues into a game? It's disgusting." Jiwoo continued. "I can tell what kind of trash family you have just by looking. But if you're just going to be a loser in here and run away like you do in reality, then why bother playing at all?" Sarang gritted her teeth, fury rising. "What could you possibly know, you little brat?" "You don't know a single thing," she screamed through tears. "I've been enduring this my entire life." The mother lunged, her hand raised to strike again. "Enduring? You think you're the one enduring. Whether it's in reality or in this game, we are your parents." Sarang's teeth ground together with rage. Jiwoo watched in disbelief that her mother was truly heartless for trying to strike her again. "It's time to say goodbye." Jiwoo's voice was calm. "Captain Love is incredibly strong. Even without a weapon, with just her bare fists, her punches are devastating." Encouraged, Sarang surged toward her mother, who scrambled backward, her face a mask of fear. Dark echoes of her past. A childhood nightmare begins to surface. With tears of anguish, Sarang lunges forward. Her fist connects with devastating force, sending her mother flying from the impact. Sometime later, the famous idol Sarang sits for an interview about her secret life as a top-tier gamer. "Yes," she confirms, "that's me. I've been having a blast in Chrono Life," she confesses. The interviewer notes the game's brutal realism, asking if she minds taking the life of even a rabbit. "Pummeling monsters," she laughs. "Of course not. It's the best stress relief there is." The world believes the idol has conquered her trauma and now lives a life of peace. Her anxiety has vanished. She doesn't even need her glasses anymore. The interviewer remarks, "That's a complete 180 from your usual self." "The opposite," Hanserang repeats. "Maybe my in-game persona is the real me." Her bold declaration thrills the audience. Sarang continues with a confident smirk. "But who really cares about things like that? This idea of a real me. If you're looking for reality in a game, you're missing the point." Meanwhile, Jiu watches the interview from his home. Jo lets out a sigh, wondering if her cool, unfiltered honesty is why her fanbase is suddenly exploding. Of course he's one of her biggest fans. The media spun the perfect fairy tale, the idol who overcame her past and left the virtual world behind. But the moment he logs into Chrono Life, he discovers a much different reality. "That damn Brad is late again," Sarang roars. "He always pulls this. Does he have a death wish or something?" Jo quickly defends himself. "I came right after your interview. Aren't you supposed to be at the broadcast station?" "It was pre-recorded, idiot," she snaps. The truth is, the idol never quit playing the game after overcoming her trauma. On the contrary, she's logging in more than ever. He'd even heard she cut back her professional schedule for it. "We don't have time for this. Let's go," Sarang urges him. Confused, Ju asks, "Go where?" "Are you seriously sweating the details right now?" she scolds. "I guess you've already forgotten and still haven't forgiven me." "It's fine." Ju relents, starting to follow her. A triumphant smirk plays across Sarang's face. "I'll let it slide this time," she declares, "since you'll be the one carrying me, of course." The main character freezes. "Carry you?" A memory flashes in his mind of a time he asked her for a carry, and she played the part of a clueless newbie. But now the tables have turned. She approaches him with a playful glint in her eye and asks, "Please carry me, Master Ju." Chrono Life, the undisputed #1 virtual reality game on the planet. With its massive player base, countless guilds vied for power. But standing above them all were the world's legendary 5 great guilds. Each one boasted unique strengths that earned them their reputation. However, one guild walked a path entirely its own. They commanded an intelligence network so vast, it put even the Global Information Guild to shame. And their operations spanned the entire continent. Every single one of its members belonged to the rogue class. This was the Robin Hood Guild, one of the 5 great powers, an organization worthy of legends, was utterly annihilated in a single night. The guild leader surveys the devastation in silence, then turns and launches himself toward the moonlit sky. He lands with an acrobatic flip, using the mountainside itself as a springboard to soar even higher. But in that instant, a figure materializes behind him. "Well, well," a voice mocks. "Looks like one little rat survived." Sensing the killing intent, the guild leader reacts instantly with a piercing slash. But his blade meets only air as the figure dissolves into an illusion. The man's voice echoes from the shadows. "You're a cut above the rest, I'll give you that." Then his presence vanishes completely. The guild leader stands bewildered. The feeling of that strike was all wrong. He couldn't understand what had just happened. Suddenly, a crushing blow slams into his back. The attacker whispers, "Even so, you're still only at our level." Spitting blood from the impact, the guild leader gasps, "Who are you? Why are you doing this?" The man simply smirks as a familiar mask materializes on his face, revealing him as a fellow guild member. "The reason?" he says with a chilling smile. "Because it's fun." Some days later, near a dense forest, a peculiar carriage travels down a road pulled by a massive cat. The coachman announces their approach. "We're almost there. The Rocky Mountain dungeon is just ahead." Inside the carriage, Gio eats some meat, commenting, "This place is closer than I thought." "You could tell that from the map," Sarang replies. "We'll arrive in about 5 minutes." They're using Chrono Life's popular transport service, the Meow Meow carriage. The powerful Molino cat, a creature native to this world, is tamed and trained to pull these carriages. Surprisingly, this whole service was started by a regular user with a tamer profession whose success made him richer than most small business owners. "We're here," Sarang exclaims. "Whoa, it's huge." Ju mulled over their destination. The Rocky Mountain Dungeon, a peak rising 1,000 meters, filled with mid-level 30 monsters, a perfect hunting ground for rookies. "Or so I've heard," he thought grimly, "since I never got past level 7. But after that lengthy introduction, their real mission was simple to power level Hanzarang. Back then, she'd been far more serious than he expected, which somehow led him to this exact moment. He wondered just how high he'd have to carry her, musing that a trip to the Urus's nest to max her out would be faster. But a glance at her hands sparked a memory. "I actually prepared a little something for you," he said, catching Sarang completely off guard by the sudden gift. With a flick of his wrist, Jua summoned an item from his inventory. The legendary transcendental gauntlets appeared once more. He explained that he'd forgotten them last time, and since he already had his own pair, he figured she should have them. A deep blush crept onto Hanzarang's face, and then tears began to well in her eyes. "Thank you," she choked out. "It's been so long since anyone gave me a gift." The main character was stunned, a famous player like her. Surely she was showered with presents. But Sarang shook her head, insisting it just wasn't the same. Jiu let out a soft chuckle, understanding completely. Clutching the gauntlets, Sarang thought to herself, he's truly not the person he used to be. She thanked him again, promising to put them to legendary use. Then a thought struck her, and she asked for his character name. Jiu was confused. Hadn't he told her already? She denied it, admitting that while she saw it in the party window, it had slipped her mind. Our protagonist opened his mouth to state his name, when a loud clatter from the cart cut him off. The cat pulling them screeched to a halt, making the coachman curse in confusion. The sudden stop sent everything in the back tumbling through the air. "Everyone all right back there?" the coachman yelled. The cat just spooked for some reason. In the chaotic aftermath, Sarang had landed right on top of Jiu. He grunted, asking if Captain Love was okay. She said she was fine, but Jiu's eyes suddenly widened. She was clutching his underwear. From a distance, Urus watched the entire scene with an expression of pure disgust. The cat continued its panicked meowing as the coachman tried to soothe it. "What in the world is wrong with you?" he muttered. Standing directly in their path was Hong, battered and covered in wounds. "Please forgive the intrusion," she pleaded. "I need your help." All eyes turned to her, leaving our heroes utterly baffled. Hong began her story speaking of a man she'd never even heard of. His level was unknown, his class a complete mystery. The only clue she had was his character name. But she knew one thing for certain. He was no ordinary player. He could somehow copy items, even manifesting a perfect replica of her Heihotal mask right before her eyes. His name, she declared, is Passive Boy. Sarang searched her memory but came up with nothing. Eurus, for some bizarre reason, pictured a giant carrot when he heard the name. Ju spoke up saying he had a question, and Hong gave a nod. He then asked the most basic thing, who are you? Sarang jumped in, exclaiming that she was the leader of the Robin Hood Guild, a hero known by every child. Eurus even added that he was there when she defeated 3 million players. But Ji Woo was unimpressed. Everyone has their own problems, he stated coldly. Your guild getting wiped out by some psycho has nothing to do with me. In a desperate move, Hong removed her mask. She bowed deeply, asking for forgiveness, and stating this was a personal plea for help. Even without a proper introduction, she was persistent. But Ju still saw no reason to get involved. Hong, revealing a stunningly beautiful face, properly introduced herself. And just like that, Ju's entire demeanor changed. A reason who needs a reason, he declared. Helping people in need is my hobby and my specialty. Sarang could only think one thing, what a scumbag. Hong graciously accepted his help, promising he wouldn't regret his choice. Then she dropped the bombshell. This problem, she revealed, also involves you. Ju was completely blindsided. Meanwhile, at the Chrono Life building, a worker announced quitting time. He called out to the infrastructure support team, telling them to head home. A man sighed, envious that they still had to grind through overtime. Their team leader protested, saying they didn't have approval. But Seo cut in, telling them to leave it all to him. He'd handle the overtime alone. A colleague smirked, teasing him about not making up with his wife yet. With a few last goodbyes, the office emptied out. Sunungan was left completely alone, a sinister smile creeping across his face. A bunch of damn idiots. He grumbled about those lazy fools criticizing Gen Z. In his eyes, they just took advantage of everything life handed them. Their greed led to their downfall, dooming them to a life of poverty forever. With that thought, he slipped on his virtual reality gear. Now that they were gone, it was time to rake in some serious cash. The device authenticated his identity and jacked him into Chrono Life. The private line of a game master flickered to life, revealing his identity as the infamous Passive Boy himself. Once inside the game, the man soared above the mountain peaks. He declared the time had finally come and summoned his legendary weapon of fearsome red sword. This was the Executioner's Blade level 99, a unique item radiating with incredible power. Sun smirked. It was time for some overtime. Every single one of his stats was completely maxed out. He had reached the master level, the absolute pinnacle, a realm beyond the grasp of even top-tier pro players. And it is only from these heights that one can acquire the ultimate items of the transcendental rank. Rumors of this tier had leaked, becoming a legend among players. Yet not a single soul had ever laid eyes upon such an item. Sarang's mind reeled in shock. She was staring at a real weapon pulled straight from mythology, the transcendental gauntlets. The sight of them left her completely frozen. She stammered out that she just wanted a better look, but an overwhelming desire to wear them was taking over. In total disbelief, she asked if it was truly a transcendental weapon. Ju just shrugged casually, telling her she could use it since he had several more. The girl gulped, her throat suddenly dry. The moment she equipped the weapon, the gauntlets permanently bound themselves to her soul, unleashing a massive explosion in the area. The system announced she had become the owner of the transcendental gauntlets, leaving Sarang utterly speechless. The gauntlets pulsed with an intense light before shrinking down and transforming into a pair of simple-looking gloves. Sarang wondered what just happened and why the legendary weapon now looked so worn and tattered. An answer materialized before her. The transcendental gauntlets were sealed due to her lack of qualifications. What the hell is this? She thought. It seemed using such a high-level weapon was a bad idea. A unique item would have been better. She then lightly tapped a nearby stone. In that instant, the stone didn't just shatter. It exploded along with the ground itself, sending a massive shockwave across the land. The girl stared in absolute shock. What was that? I barely even touched it, and this was the power of a sealed weapon. Eurus casually remarked that it was incredibly weak. So there's nothing special about the transcendental rank. He scoffed, barely containing his laughter. Ju had to agree. Urus then asked, by the way, what's your plan now? Hyung-nim, will you take on Hong's request? Ju replied that he had no choice since the case was directly connected to him. The scene then flashes back to his earlier conversation with Hong. When she first made the request, he had refused. There was no way. He didn't even know what this so-called passive boy looked like. Hong had challenged him, asking what he thought the target's true objective was. Ju figured he was just doing it all for fun, but Hong shot him down, saying that was an obvious lie. His true goal is money. He copies items and sells them for a fortune. According to our guild's intel, we know he's operating as a merchant player. What's more, he's been flooding the market with items from Urus's nest. And even though it's tanking their value, his actions aren't technically illegal. However, what he's doing is a clear abuse of authority. Jiu asked what she meant, and Hong continued her grim explanation. In any case, this is where you come in. If we let Passive Boy continue, the game's entire economy will collapse, and Chrono Life will be destroyed. Jiu scratched his nose, wondering if she was serious. So what's the big problem? Just report him to customer support. They'll ban his account. Hong laughed. You're more of an idiot than I thought. Jiu bristled. What did you just say? The girl explained that the support center was completely useless for this problem. The moment a report is filed, all they send back is an automated response. Hong then stepped up onto her carriage saying, You are the only person in this game who can stop him. You're the one who single-handedly defeated the World Union Guild. Then she leaped from the carriage. I'm counting on you. Before this game is ruined for good, you must find Passive Boy and destroy him. Back in the present, our hero complained about what a pain this was, but knew he had no choice. If he just ignored the problem, his own ability to sell his items would be in jeopardy. Sarang asked if he had any leads, since they couldn't just search for him blindly. Jiwoo replied with a smirk. If we can't report him to customer support, there's only one answer. We'll just have to blackmail the higher-ups. Irus and Sarang were stunned by his bold idea. At the Chrono Life building, Jiu pulled out his phone and dialed the president directly. He ordered the man to the GBOP plaza, threatening to crash the server once again if he was a no-show. On the other end of the line, Dakbae barely managed to sputter out what that bastard meant before our protagonist hung up, bursting into laughter. A furious Dakbae slammed his phone on the table and cursed the boy's name. Jiu skipped along cheerfully mockingly, asking if customer service wasn't working. In that case, he'd just have to meet the president himself. He figures he might as well make the most of it and orders 2 hearty bowls of goobab. But as he swings the door open, a familiar figure is already waiting for him. It's none other than Han Sarang. Startled, Jiu asks if she's crazy, warning someone might spot her. But Sarang is unfazed, claiming it's so late no one will even notice. Besides, she reminds him in the real world he's supposed to use her full name. The idol quickly sends a message to her Nuna, letting her know she's just stepping out for a walk. On the other end, the woman in the shower grumbles. Annoyed, the girl took off without a single word beforehand. Back at the restaurant, the door bursts open with a thunderous crash. Dakbae storms in, bellowing for that bastardly Jiu, wondering what gives the brat the audacity to summon him without an ounce of respect. His eyes then lock onto the two of them, sitting at a table and eating like nothing's wrong. Dakbae storms their table and seizes Jiu by the throat, snarling that the ill-mannered imbecile has some nerve ordering around his elder. But his rage is cut short when he notices the girl across from him. He demands to know who she is. Jiu's girlfriend, perhaps. Before Sarang can utter a word, Jiu cuts in asking if the old man has lost his mind. That's Han Sarang, the nation's top idol. He warns him that if he keeps spouting nonsense, her entire fanbase will come for his head. Enraged by the boy's tone, Dakbae's grip tightens. But just then, Sarang slams her hand down on the table. She demands they cut the theatrics and get straight to the point. Jiu quickly agrees, and Dakbae, sensing her deadly serious aura, finally releases his grip. Jiu coolly orders another bowl for the president, as Dakbae is left stunned by the reason for this sudden meeting. Item duplication. He scoffs, thinking it was some world-ending crisis, sneering that they must think the game is a total joke. He argues the government's approval wasn't just for show. No hacker on Earth is skilled enough to pull off a stunt like that. Joe fires back, calling him a liar, stating that someone personally witnessed the item being duplicated. Dakbae insists the witness must have seen things. The two launch into a heated argument until Sarang cuts them both off. She calmly suggests that if an outside hacker is impossible, perhaps the threat is coming from within. Dakbae falls silent for a few seconds. He dismisses the idea as equally impossible. Not even internal staff with a GM account have the authority to duplicate items. With that, he sets his spoon down. He declares he's a busy man, tells them to cover the bill, and to enjoy their little chat. Sarang sends him off with a cheerful goodbye, while Jiu thinks to himself that the old geezer genuinely wants to kill him. Outside, Dakbae immediately lights a cigar, taking a long drag as he pauses, lost in thought. He makes a call to team leader Choi. The president gives a single order: gather 5 of his most trusted men, immediately. Back in the Stone Mountain dungeon, Jiu sighs that they're right back where they started, and Sarang can only agree. Our main character complains about how frustrating this is, vowing that whether it's the passive boy or someone else, he's going to personally smash their head in. Sarang just laughs, teasing him for acting so tough. She then gets serious, wondering what the passive boy's true goal is. Jiu asks why the sudden question, and Sarang explains that something feels off, no matter how she looks at it. Even if money was the motive, there's no logical reason to target the Robin Hood Guild specifically. Joe admits he has no clue. Maybe they just had a hoard of expensive items. Sarang counters, that's exactly what makes it so strange. If someone could truly duplicate items, they could sell literally anything. So why target random players? And why go against the Robin Hood Guild, the one group with the best intel network in the game? Her sharp reasoning catches Jiu off guard. Still, he just shrugs, saying he's got nothing. Sarang sighs that she's not surprised, and Jiu snaps back that she hasn't gotten any smarter either. Suddenly, a colossal explosion tears through the air beside them. What was that? What just happened? Sarang stares at the massive plume of smoke, noting the blast seems to be on the same level as his own attacks. Without a second thought, Ju dashes toward the blast zone, leaving the girl screaming his name behind him. At the epicenter of the explosion, Haebek is on his knees, grievously wounded, his arm gruesomely severed. Sun lets out a cruel, mocking laugh, sneering that the so-called legendary Haebek is nothing more than an overblown rumor. The boss demands to know why he's doing this, warning that as a world coordinator, such rogue behavior will not be tolerated. If the higher-ups catch him, there will be nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. He can't possibly handle the consequences. Sun seizes him by the throat, calling him an arrogant AI, a worthless piece of data that dares to defy him. He reminds him that killing a unique boss like him won't trigger a reset. It will mean permanent deletion. If he doesn't want to be erased from existence, he'd better start talking. He demands to know the location of Haebek's master. But Haebek answers not with fear, but with a defiant laugh. He asks if Sunguan truly believes he would ever betray his master. Enraged by his defiance, Sunguan raises his sword, roaring for him to go to hell. Stop! A sudden command freezes him in place. Sion senses a powerful presence has arrived. It seems the goddess of life Luna was already here. He scoffs, "Just wait a second. I'll deal with you right after I crush this bug." With a soft sigh and a faint smile, Luna shakes her head. It's pointless. The moment you accessed the Game Master account, you became just like the rest of them. Enraged by her condescending tone, Shengwan unleashes a torrent of insults. But Luna's voice is cold as ice. You are nothing but trash. Sinungan's blade halts. A slow, menacing laugh escapes his lips. He slams Haebek to the ground. Why waste time on a dying man, when his true target was right in front of him? Turning toward Luna, he stalks forward. Tell me where Haebek's master is, he smirks. But don't worry, you don't have to answer right away. We have plenty of time. After all, he sneers, once I rip off your arms and legs, I'll hang you from a tree. I'll cauterize the wounds and keep you healed so you don't die. That way we can talk all night long. I'm working overtime, you see. Luna's cold gaze pierces him, reminding her of another. Closing her eyes, she murmurs, You look just like him. But you're his complete opposite. Confused, he barks, What the hell are you talking about? Stop spouting nonsense. Suddenly, a shadow falls from the sky. A colossal claw descends and crushes him into nothingness. A spray of crimson splatters across Luna's face. The monstrous palm remains covering the spot where he stood. To her, he was simply disgusting. Luna turns to leave her divine beauty radiating with every step. But then, a voice echoes. I'd forgotten about this little trick. He reappears without a scratch patting the monster's leg. So you must be its owner. A smirk spreads across his face. No wonder you were so confident. This is going to be annoying. Luna spins around, her eyes wide with shock. How are you still alive? She declares, This time I'll make sure you don't return filth like you doesn't deserve to exist. But Seungin just shrugs. I don't really care. Wan raises his hand and the world begins to warp. Luna looks around as a new dimension materializes around them. The Game Master Zone. A pocket dimension only accessible to those with supreme authority. A private stage for his twisted games. I don't deserve to live, he scoffs. That's pretty cringy. You need to stop pretending this game is real life. Luna responds with a gaze of pure ice. Meanwhile, outside this space, Jiu and Sarang race toward the chaos. Was that explosion from him? Sarang pants. Jiu nods grimly. I think it's him, the hacker from our company. The president said it was impossible, but the look on his face told a different story. He asks, Didn't you hear that guy single-handedly annihilated the entire Robin Hood Guild? He must have created a superpowered account, and now he's making his move. Is there any way to go faster? Sarang yells. But Jiu shakes his head. I didn't put any points into agility. As they near the strange rift, Sarang asks what it is. Haebek slumped against a rock answers. Traces of his teleport skill? Well, if it isn't Mr. Hero. Jiu stares at him. What are you doing here and what happened to your arm? Sarang glares, suddenly remembering. This is the guy who kidnapped me. Haebek explains weakly. That monster attacked me and dragged someone named Luna into his Game Master Zone. Luna? Jiu asks. Haebek coughs. She talked about you a lot. He insinuates, sounds like she might have a crush, which instantly irritates Sarang. She had straight black hair and a great body. Jiu scoffs. You mean that little cockroach? We barely even know each other. Sarang mutters. Sounds like Underpants Boy's type. Get a grip, Jiu snaps back. You're the one who keeps saying stuff like that. He continues, I'm not crazy enough to like someone who insulted my parents. I'm not interested in the slightest. The girl's face visibly brightens at his passionate denial. Haebek just sighs. So what? That doesn't matter now. From a distance, Urus watches the bickering duo. They're kind of cute. Just then, Haebek coughs up a huge mouthful of blood. Are you okay? Jiu asks, alarmed. You look like you're about to die. I'm not okay at all, Haebek gasps. Mr. Hero, I need a little help. Jiu raises an eyebrow. Why should I help you? I could just wait for you to die and take your dropped items. Sarang nods eagerly. Yeah, we should split the loot. Habek smirks through the pain. Are you sure? Because if I die, the mirror I gave you disappears too. In a flash, Ju's hand is on his shoulder. Relax, he says with a strained smile. I'll heal you no matter what it takes. How? Sarang asks, confused. You didn't bring any healing potions? Ju just grins. It's fine. A faint aura begins to emanate from his hands. Gio activates a unique ability from his Master Rookie class. The Cleric's Heal. He decides to use the skill, but it only recovers health points. Suddenly, Habek's health bar starts to move, regenerating 1 point at a time. Is this really a heal? He groans. It feels more like you're torturing me. Ju grumbled that perhaps he should have put a few points into intelligence. He then asked what would happen to his arm, since scars fade with full health. But a destroyed body part could only be restored in a tavern. Habek explained that rule only applies to players. Monsters like him only recovered their bodies after respawning. Our hero declared he would take Habek's life in a single blow, so he wouldn't feel a thing. But Habek urged him to wait. He revealed a shocking truth: he's a unique boss. If he loses his life, he can never respawn. Joe, completely shocked, demanded to know what he was talking about, shouting that this was one messed up game. Habek calmly assured him that only a few unique bosses existed, and it didn't affect the entire game world. For example, Eurus was also a unique boss, a fact the dragon himself confirmed. That's why he so desperately begged to be saved. And besides those two, Luna was also a unique boss. Jiu was floored, questioning if that cockroach was actually a boss. Meanwhile, back in this game Master Zone, a sudden explosion erupted. Sun charged toward Luna, roaring for her to go to hell. The girl, however, simply stood her ground, challenging him to bring it on. The blow created an immense blast of pure energy. Without hesitation, Sun moved in for a second devastating strike, which exploded with the same incredible intensity. Luna just warned him that his efforts were useless. Flying through the sky with pure rage in her eyes, she declared herself the goddess of life. A mere human could never take the life of a god. Sun, however, cut her off, claiming he couldn't hear a thing. Luna's face twisted with pure irritation at the interruption. Sun called her childish, saying she only thinks she sounds cool with those grand speeches. He explained he's been with the company for years and already knows her abilities. Furthermore, he witnessed her entire battle with our protagonist, as the security footage was shared among the team leaders and higher-ups. Her whole speech about being untouchable was all thanks to her hidden ability, the divine power of life creation. It wasn't that his attacks weren't working. It was that she recreated her entire body the instant before she was about to die. He then charged forward with his sword once more. His strike caused another blast of energy that hit Luna head-on. Immediately, Luna activated her life creation ability. As she returned to her goddess form, Sun commented that just as he expected, it was a completely overpowered ability, and the one that received the most complaints during the company's beta phase. She even created Urakan with this ability, using fragments of the left head found in Urus's nest. That's why she had called him her son. So Sun lunged to strike her again, but Luna simply said he talked too much, splitting him in half with her scepter. She questioned the point of it all. If he couldn't take her life, knowing everything was useless. As Sun's body flew through the air, he smiled. He told her she had finally attacked him directly. Suddenly, her divine scepter transformed back into a simple staff, and the girl stared in disbelief. Sun asked what she thought he'd brought into this space. Luna's godly robes also began to dissolve, returning her to the form she had when she was still just a player. Seeing her look of complete shock, Sun mocked her, asking if she even knew how to make such a cute face before striking her with his sword. He declared that if he takes her life, Habek's master will finally be forced to appear. So farewell, unique boss, goddess of life Luna. In a rather fancy bar, a table was filled with expensive drinks. Sun quickly took a gulp, slamming the glass down, and declaring that drinking after a few hours of overtime was the absolute best. His subordinate commented that he worked hard, and now only the final step remained. But Sun denied it. That bastard Habek never called his master. The subordinate argued that at least he had taken Luna's life, which should have been enough. However, Sun revealed a stunning truth: he couldn't actually kill her. His subordinate was in shock. Sun kept his gaze lowered, but said it didn't matter as there were other ways to meet him. The subordinate admitted there was something he couldn't get off his mind, wanting to know who Habek's master truly was. Sun looked up, asking if he'd been working for him all this time without even knowing that. The young man replied that he'd been following his orders without question, ever since their university days. Sun set his glass on the table, explaining that this master was one of the main story bosses in Chrono Life, the greatest merchant, the disaster of sloth. The subordinate questioned if a monster like that was really a merchant. Sun confirmed it, saying that kind of freedom was common in Chrono Life. His friend said he'd heard that title before, and that Urakan was known as the sin of gluttony. Sun asked if he seriously didn't know about the 7 deadly sins from Catholicism, a concept constantly used in movies, manga, and games. Pride, greed, envy, wrath, lust, gluttony, and sloth. These sins are the root of all others, and they are called the 7 deadly sins. Isn't that just plagiarism? Is Chrono Life cutting corners? The subordinate demanded. But his boss Sun retorted, "You're the idiot here. The main story bosses were designed this way from the very beginning. Urus of Pride, Urakan of Gluttony, Riot of Sloth, and Luna of Lust," he listed. "But that damned woman is a main boss too." He argued, if a character like that is just some random player, the entire game balance will collapse. However, his boss simply explained, she is a boss, but that doesn't make her an NPC. "A player. Class changed into a main boss," the employee stammered. Sun slammed his glass on the table. "The freedom in Chrono Life is beyond your pathetic imagination," he declared. "Just as a boss can become a merchant, a player can ascend to become a main boss." Ju complained, "This is getting too complicated. So what is that cockroach anyway? Some kind of player-NPC hybrid?" Hebek admitted, "I am not certain. This is a situation I have never encountered before." "But he would know," he suggested. "The passive guy is a GM." Our protagonist grumbled, "Great, now I have one more reason to beat him to a pulp." Sarang interrupted, "Wait, there's still something that doesn't add up." She questioned, why did the passive boy want to meet the disaster of sloth directly? If it was just about money, he could have put the item up for auction. She pointed out, ever since the Robin Hood Guild's attack, none of his actions have made any logical sense. Habek's eyes gleamed. "Personally, I have a theory. It's because of the peace of God, or as they are truly known, mythic rank items." Ju's interest was piqued. "I've heard that term before." Eurus explained, "It's what Habek said when he kidnapped Captain Love. It's just another name for mythic rank items." At that moment, Hong approached their group. "Are you all talking about the mythic rank items too?" she inquired. "Sorry for vanishing," she said. "I was busy with my own investigation. Let's form a temporary party. I've found the passive boy's hideout." The group followed Hong deep into the mountains, arriving at a small, isolated cabin. Sarang was skeptical. "This is really the hideout. It's much simpler than I ever imagined." "This is the place," Hong confirmed using her judgment skill on the location, which flashed with confirmation. "Is the owner here now?" Ju asked. Hong shook her head. "No signs of him." Someone started to say, "It's a shame. I'd like to see what's inside." But before they could finish, an explosive crash echoed through the forest. Jiu had shattered the cabin wall with a single blow from his stick. Hong stared astonished. "How did you break the wall?" Jiu replied simply. "I hit it and it broke." Without any more hesitation, they stepped inside. The sight made Sarang's jaw drop. Mountains of gold were piled high beside countless rare artifacts. "Are all of these copied items?" she whispered. Hong's voice was firm. "No, none of these items are copies. They're all mythic rank." Hong's valuation was chilling. "The total value here is around 5 billion. The number left everyone completely stunned. Hong continued, "I recognize several of these from the items he stole. He probably left them here because his inventory was full. Just as we thought, his goal was always the mythic items." "But why?" Ju demanded. "If it's about the price, he could have just raided Urus's nest like I did." Hong replied, "Doing it that way would only get him a small amount of money, and the company would notice immediately just like they did with me. Mythic items are different. There is a buyer who will purchase all of them infinitely." Ju began to think, in that case, the buyer is... Hong interrupted him, revealing the truth. "Habek's master, the world's biggest black market riot." Habek nodded grimly. "I was thinking the exact same thing. That passive boy is worse than I ever imagined," Hong muttered. "But regardless, it was a good plan. Since Riot isn't a user, there's no risk of information leaking, and he can sell the items without destroying the game's economy. If we take a screenshot of this place and report it to customer service, they would have to take action since a GM gathered these items in his personal space." She then removed her mask. "Thank you for your hard work. Thanks to you, we can finally solve this case." Ju stared her down. "By whose permission are you closing this case? Are you filming some kind of drama?" he scoffed. "You've been monologuing all day, just for the grand finale to be a report to customer service?" "Yes," Hong confirmed. "Is there another course of action?" Ju scoffed at the very idea. "What else is there to do? We're going to teach that passive boy a very painful lesson." Back in the city, he appeared wearing Hong's mask, while Sun, completely infuriated by the whole situation, glared at our protagonist from within the crowd. Sarang whispered, "Is that him, the passive boy?" He appeared right in the center of the village, just like Underpants Guy said. Sun roared, "What's with the mask? Are you trying to disguise yourself, you stick bastard?" Ju just burst out laughing. He claimed he just borrowed it from Hong, bragging that the mask was so legendary anyone would know it. From a nearby rooftop, an assassin scoffed, "Isn't that the passive kid?" Hong smirked, confirming he had taken the bait perfectly. The guild member questioned his plan, staging this right in the village square. Inside, Ju laid out the first step they were taking every single one of his items. When Hong asked why our hero simply stated that explaining was a waste of time, she just needed to trust him. After all, he'd already mapped out every possibility. "Now then," he said, "lend me a mask. Yours will do just fine." Sarang immediately landed a powerful kick to his back. A short while later, Sung-won finally arrived at the cabin, his face twisting with rage at the sight of his destroyed wall. He charged forward, screaming in disbelief. A personal hideout was supposed to be indestructible. He frantically searched for his mythic-grade items and all his gold, but found nothing. Absolutely nothing. The grim reality hit him he was totally screwed. His rage boiled over when he spotted a note left on the floor. Jiu's message was simple. If he wanted his gear back, he'd better be at the village square at 7 p.m. sharp. Back in the present, Sungwon stomped forward roaring, "How dare you touch my gold!" But Jiu held up a hand, warning him to stop right there. He then revealed the draconic fire dagger. "Take one more step, and I sell this to the nearest NPC shop." "You fool!" Sungwon shrieked. "That thing is worth 200 million in cash. You'd get less than 300 gold for it." Gritting his teeth, he bellowed, "You bastard! What in the hell do you want from me?" Jiu just smiled. "Absolutely nothing. But if I had to name one thing," he added, "it would be for you to figure that out on your own." Watching from the side, Sarang thought to herself that Underpants guy really did look like a first-class villain right now. Jiu just kept taunting, "Having trouble there, buddy. What's your next move?" Watching the man tremble with fury was incredibly satisfying. But in a flash, Sungwon vanished, reappearing directly behind our hero. He activated his teleport skill to the GM zone, dragging Jiu along with him. Back in the city, a cloud of smoke obscured everyone's vision. Sarang desperately called out for Underpants guy, only to realize he was gone. Inside the isolated GM zone, a titanic explosion rocked the very space. Jiu and Sungwon's weapons met with unimaginable force. The GM, his face contorted with rage, screamed, "How dare a filthy pig like you lay a hand on an administrator? I'll dice your body into cubes and feed you to the slimes." A direct hit slammed into Jiu, triggering a cataclysmic blast behind him. He plunged his staff into the ground to halt his momentum, carving a deep trench as he skidded to a stop. The sheer force of the blow shattered Hong's mask, which fell to the ground in pieces, revealing a deep gash across Jiu's face. "Wow," Jiu commented. "You're even bigger trash than I thought, calling a player from your own company a pig." But his body was already mending, the healing factor kicking in instantly. Sungwon laughed maniacally. "Who cares, pigs like you get lost in the game and forget what's real? You become so obsessed you go insane over mere pixels. There's no reason to treat scummy users like you as actual human beings." He brought his sword down again, meeting Jiu's staff in another dimension-shaking explosion. The impact obliterated the landscape around them. "So cringe," Jiu sighed. "You're just blaming the players for your own failures?" "Sounds like you're having a midlife crisis." This comment pushed Sungwon over the edge. He vanished from sight completely. Jiu braced for an attack from above, but the real threat came from behind. His eyes widened in panic. "I can't see him." In the next instant, Jiu was assaulted by a storm of slashes from every conceivable angle. "Don't you dare underestimate me," Sungwon roared. "All you players are the same. No matter how hard we developers work, all we ever get are insults and complaints." His mind flashed back 7 years ago to the Chrono Life headquarters, back when he was just a passionate developer who hadn't yet lost his way. But Jiu cut his flashback short, smashing his staff into the GM's face. "Shut up! I couldn't care less about your tragic villain backstory," he sneered. "So cut the crap already." The attack triggered an explosion bigger than anything they'd seen before. As the smoke cleared, Sungwon's own healing factor skill activated. He recovered in a flash and landed a vicious slash across Jiu's chest. Jiu staggered back, surprised. He has healing factor too. But then it clicked. For a GM's account, it made perfect sense. Suddenly, Sungwon unleashed a hidden skill tied to the strength stat Spirit of a Titan. A colossal blue energy erupted from him. Jiu realized this must be a hidden skill, just like the one he himself had found. With newfound power, Sungwon slowly began to rise. The skill description was terrifying. Spirit of a Titan granted the user the raw power of a giant, and its requirements were just as demanding as his own healing factor. Sungwon let out a primal scream of pure rage, and the massive spirit behind him mirrored his every motion. A tidal wave of blue energy poured into his body. Jiu could only watch, thinking, what's with all the flashy effects? Even my healing factor isn't this dramatic. At last, the skill fully activated. A system window appeared for its duration. His attack damage and range were boosted by 1,000%. Eyes glowing with immense power, Sungwon raised his sword and unleashed a devastating horizontal slash directly at Jiu. He saw the attack coming, but it was far too late. An immense wave of pure destruction slammed into him, wiping out everything in its path. Instantly, his healing factor roared to life, his body regenerating in a flash. Jiu gripped his staff, observing the utter devastation. He smirked. "That's practically a cheat skill. You should just hand it over Shan Wang." Sheng barely had a moment to react before a shadowy tentacle erupted and pierced clean through his stomach. Jiu unleashed a hidden power, the skill of gluttony. He declared he could now steal his opponent's stats and learn his abilities. But at the very last second, Seongan vanished, activating a hidden agility skill known as the Lightspeed Dash. Immediately, Jiu was assaulted by dozens of slashes from every direction. He couldn't believe it. How was that even possible? The Lightspeed Dash allowed him to move at impossible speeds in any direction, and he charged forward once more. "A battle's outcome is decided by stats and calculations," he declared. "And mine are all at level 99,999. With that, he buried a devastating punch into Jiu's stomach, sending him flying into the horizon. Sungwon landed gracefully, wondering if Jiu just didn't get it. No matter how great his control was, he could never overcome such a colossal difference in stats. In his eyes, his opponent's gameplay was utter garbage. He was just a loser who relied entirely on maxed out items. Kneeling his staff planted in the ground, Ju gritted his teeth as pure rage burned within him. To hear that from a cheater abusing a Game Master account was infuriating. But Seungwon just scoffed. Who cares about that? If you don't like it, you should have applied to be a GM too, he mocked. You're just jealous of my passion for the game. He bragged about how a few data tweaks made him the strongest right before a headbutt smashed violently into his face. Ju had rocketed toward him, striking with unbelievable speed. Seongwon was sent flying, blood pouring from his nose and a look of absolute shock on his face. What the hell was that? He demanded. How did you move so fast with such pathetic agility? Ju just replied, what else could it be but pure gameplay? Seongwon staggered to his feet, calling him an arrogant bastard. He then unleashed his lightspeed dash against him again, yelling for him to try that trick once more because no skill could ever match his divine speed. Ju, however, simply ducked. I didn't use a skill, he said. I used the game system itself. He swung his staff in midair and then suddenly pivoted, reversing his momentum and leaving Seongwon completely confused. Ju explained the trick, the rebound control option. By striking in the opposite direction, he used the recoil as a slingshot, launching himself straight towards Seongwon. The administrator was completely stunned by the brilliant maneuver. Ju smashed his staff right into the man's forehead. He's pretty fast, Seongwon thought in a daze. Ju meanwhile played it off like it was just a lucky shot. The administrator crashed to the ground, kicking up a huge cloud of smoke. Ju's voice taunted him from the dust. How did that feel? Was it as amazing as you thought? He explained he had simply turned off the rebound control option in the game settings and wanted to know how it felt to take a planet-shattering rebound attack head-on. Seongwon roared with anger, calling him a bastard who relied on garbage mechanics and telling him he had no reason to be so proud. He swore it wouldn't happen again, dismissing it as a lucky shot. To his surprise, Ju agreed, admitting he was still much slower than the lightspeed dash. So let's just cut to the chase and finish this, Ju proposed. But Seongwon just laughed. He called him a filthy little player, sneering that one lucky hit had clearly gone to his head. After all, a mere user like him could never defeat a god. But Ju simply replied, oh, there's a way. He pointed his hand forward as a purple light began to emanate from his palm. Goodbye, passive boy, Ju said. It may have been quick, but it was quite fun. Outside the game, Sarang was getting anxious. She wanted to know what Underwear Boy was planning, because no matter how strong he was, he couldn't possibly beat a GM. Hong confessed that she didn't know the details either, and that apparently not even his girlfriend was fully in the loop. Sarang was thrilled to be called that, and said the only thing Ju had told her was his plan to provoke the passive boy and lure him into the GM zone. But Hong then revealed something that was bothering her, the reason he had left a note and postponed the entire plan by a day. Somehow, she believed it was connected to the method he was about to use to win. Back in the game, Jiu's hand continued to glow with an immense purple aura. Seeing his opponent's confident expression, Seongwon started to wonder if he might actually have a plan to defeat him. The protagonist then activated his skill Character Summon. It was the most basic summoning skill in the game. Seongwon was stunned. Character Summon, he repeated before bursting into uncontrollable laughter. He was expecting some legendary skill, but it was just a simple summon. He scoffed, asking if Ju thought he was some kind of jack-of-all-trades, because even with that skill, it would be completely useless with low charisma and intelligence stats. Those were the basics. And with such a pathetic level, he could only summon some weak little monster. He spat the words, filthy pig, but his voice died in his throat as a portal tore through reality and a man stepped out. The figure coolly produced a cigar, adjusting his sunglasses. It was President Yopei. At the sight of him, Seongwon's face went pale with shock. A smile crept across Jiu's face. Seongwon's priceless reaction made the entire summoning worth it. Just the night before, a colleague had asked Yopei if he was staying for another round, but the president had politely declined. He claimed he had to work overtime. His colleague praised his dedication, turning to his friend to grab another round of drinks. But on his way out, the Sunbae came face to face with a wall of men in black suits. They were President Deokbae's personal entourage. Later, in a dark alley, that same employee was on his knees begging for his life. He swore he'd leave the country with the money, pleading that he was only following orders from above. One of the team leaders asked for the call, and Deokbae gave a single chilling order: get rid of him. Walking over to Ju, he thanked the young man. Because of him, they'd caught a traitor before he could cause any real damage. Ju could only agree, wondering if this was a gaming company or the actual mafia. Deokbae admitted he'd been planning to end Ju's life if he'd been summoned for no reason, and our protagonist just calmly accepted it. The president chuckled, saying it was a joke, then laid out the passive boy's fate. They would unleash the legal team, sue him into oblivion, and of course fire him. Ju then asked if the president had any plans for tomorrow at 7 p.m. When Deokbae said no, a massive grin spread across our protagonist's face. He told him to participate in the proper lesson that was about to begin. Back in the present, Seongwon's legs gave out from under him at the sight of the president, and he let out a terrified scream. He frantically begged the system to log him out, but permission was denied. He was still in combat. In a panic, he declared he knew what to do, commanding the GM zone to close. Joe pointed out the obvious the coward was trying to run. In response, the president gave his own command, Open Presidential Zone. The entire world was bathed in an ominous green light. Song-won's terror peaked as he cried out that it was all over. He clutched his sword, trembling uncontrollably, but muttered that it didn't matter. He was just going to quit the company after this anyway. Dashing forward with unbelievable speed, he unleashed an attack, thinking that he didn't care if it was the president. He could just go to hell, but his blade met only air slicing off just the very tip of the president's cigar. Seong-won froze in absolute fear at the result. Even Jiu was completely speechless. The president took another drag from his cigar. Even rabid dogs hesitate before biting their master, he said, his voice dripping with contempt. You're worse than a mad dog. President Choi Deok-bae's stats were infinite. His level was also infinite. He then pulled back his fist, making a final declaration. You're fired. There was nothing Song-won could do but accept his fate and close his eyes. The fist connected, shattering his face in an instant. An explosion far greater than any of Jiu's attacks erupted from the point of impact. That single punch had utterly annihilated the passive boy. Jiu couldn't believe it. The damage had surpassed even the 9,999 healing factor. This old man was a monster, and just like that, the problem was solved. Every single epic item the passive boy had stolen was instantly returned to its rightful owner. In the end, it turned out that numerous guilds had fallen victim to his scheme. Jiu later learned that Song-won was fired that very same day. Even in the real world, the old president beat him to a pulp before kicking him out onto the street. He foolishly tried to sue the chairman for assault, but that move only made his life a living nightmare. As a counterattack, the old chairman went all in on the legal war and was ultimately cleared of every single charge. Seong-won would now spend the rest of his miserable life paying back the company for damages and lost profits. To make matters worse, rumors spread that he'd been permanently blacklisted from the entire industry. And that was the satisfying end to his story. Back in the game's starting village, Ju's life as a seller was finally back in full swing. He approached his friends, finding Hong in her usual mask and Sarang with a huge smile on her face. Everything was finally back to normal. Logging out of Chrono Life, he found himself on his couch, letting out a heavy sigh. Ju realized there was still one thing nagging at him. Something he never got to ask the passive boy. He desperately wanted to know how that cockroach could have been a player and an NPC at the exact same time, and why nobody seemed to know who he was. But as he stood up, he noticed a girl sitting on his couch. Jiu froze, his expression changing in an instant. Luna seemed thrilled to see him awake. It's been a while, Mr. Loser, she chirped. Our protagonist wordlessly prepared some ramen for her. This looks amazing, Luna said with a sparkle in her eye. It's gotta be delicious. Of course it is, Jiu muttered. As she started eating, he watched her every move, wondering what on earth was happening in his own house. At least one mystery was solved. She wasn't some non-player character. She had always been a real player. Just then, Luna caught his intense gaze, and a deep blush crept up Ju's neck as she blushed right back. Why are you staring at me like that? She questioned, a playful tone in her voice as Ju scrambled for an excuse. Is it because I'm so beautiful? A flash of annoyance hit the protagonist. Stop being ridiculous and just eat your ramen. With a little smirk, she calmly returned to her meal. Ju did the same, his face still burning. He couldn't deny she was gorgeous, but then her cruel words echoed in his mind, calling him a loser, unfit for her party. Even worse, she had called his parents beggars. He realized he'd almost been swayed again, acting just like a loser. Steeling himself, he confronted her directly. Who in the hell are you? And how do you know my address and the code to my door? Luna finished her ramen, then stood up and stretched lazily. I suppose I should reward you for the meal, she said, since I'm sure your head is filled with questions. You can ask anything you want. I'll answer it all. Gio's eyes narrowed with suspicion, but he agreed. Fine, I'll start with something easy. He asked, is that your natural hair color? Because the first time we met, it was light pink. Luna looked at him, a faint blush on her cheeks. You've asked me that before, she said, a hint of happiness in her voice. I'm glad you remembered our first battle. She confirmed it was her natural color, leaving Ju utterly baffled. What in the world are you talking about? The girl quickly tried to change the subject. Do you prefer the pink? I can always dye it back if you like. But he pressed on with a more important question. He needed to know if her character was deleted after he defeated her. Luna explained that while she did lose her life in that battle, her character wasn't erased because the fight took place while she was in her human state. Ju demanded more details. She confessed she had no idea her divine authority would vanish when attacked inside an administrator's zone. It was a massive relief for her. If that hadn't been the case, she would have been forced to start over from level 1. Ju then brought up her original quest. Was she still planning to take 1,000 lives to become the goddess of life? Luna shook her head. Killing 1,000 players was only one of the requirements. In fact, there was an even harder condition she had to meet for her class change. She revealed she could now switch freely between her human and goddess forms, then asked if he had any more questions about that. Ju admitted he appreciated her answers, but his patience was wearing thin. You still haven't answered the first and most important question. He stared her down. Who are you? You shadow me everywhere in the game, he said, his voice low and serious. But following me into the real world, that's crossing the line. He warned her, don't you dare dodge the question again. Answer me now or I'm calling the police. Luna met his intense gaze, then slowly closed her eyes. In that world, she whispered, there are far too many people getting in our way. She then stood up, her entire demeanor changing. The reason I came here was to make you an offer. Mr. Loser, do you want to become my man? Ju's mind went completely blank. The shocking proposal hung in the air, followed by a heavy, awkward silence. Suddenly, the doorbell began ringing, over and over, shattering the tension. Who could that be at this hour? Ju wondered as he walked to the door. Through the intercom, a cheerful voice called out. Is Boxer Boy in? It's me, his friend Sarang. She insisted. I need to talk to him about something really important. Please open up. Ju's eyes darted back towards the living room. He froze, his mind racing. Luna was still in his apartment. After a moment that felt like an eternity, he finally opened the door. Han Sarang immediately pouted. You should have opened it sooner. You just left me waiting out here. So this is Boxer Boy's house, she thought, looking around. It was much cleaner than she expected, with the layout surprisingly similar to her own place. Her eyes then landed on the table. Oh, were you having a late-night snack? Looks like you're a fan of spicy food. Ju simply confirmed it, then cut to the chase. Why are you here so late at night? It's about the game, of course, Sarang replied brightly. What time are you logging in tomorrow? Ju explained that he wasn't sure yet. It all depended on what he had to do after he woke up. From the other room, Luna listened to their entire conversation, her eyes closed in a silent wave of jealousy. Sarang declared she'd see him tomorrow, and if he dared to oversleep, she'd kill him. But before I go, she said, there's one more thing. She held out her hand. Let me borrow your phone. I can't just come over every time I need to talk to you. Ju hesitated. Is it really okay for a celebrity to be giving out her number so easily? Sarang just scoffed. What's with that attitude? After she keyed in her contact info, she handed the phone back. Okay, now call me so I can save your number too. With a final chilling warning, she told him if he ignored her messages, she'd personally book his one-way trip to the underworld. And with that, the apartment door clicked shut. Ju was left frozen, wondering what whirlwind had just torn through his life. Outside, Sarang let out a huge sigh of relief. She couldn't believe she'd scored his number so naturally. She had to hurry and send him a message. Meanwhile, back in the apartment, Joe clutched his chest, certain all this midnight madness was going to give him a heart attack. Luna reappeared, demanding to know why she had to hide, since it wasn't like they were doing anything strange. He shot back that her presence alone was the strangest thing happening. He was exhausted and desperately wanted her to leave. But Luna declared she would only leave after spending the night pushing Ju right to the edge of his sanity. The girl laughed, saying she was just kidding, and would leave as soon as he answered her offer. What kind of insane offer is that? He demanded. And why do you always spout such nonsense? Just who are you anyway? Luna mused that his question was a bit too broad, but to put it simply, she wanted him to join her party inside the game. The next day, within a majestic hall, Habayak called out for his master. He presented himself even with a missing arm, hailing him as the Lord Disaster of Sloth. The great merchant Riot sat upon his throne and stared down at his subordinate's wound. He demanded to know what happened to his arm. Habayak begged for forgiveness, explaining that his own lack of skill had led to his body being damaged. A chilling aura erupted from the throne. Riot extended a hand toward his servant, instantly healing the wound with his power. A brand new arm grew from his shoulder. Habayak stared in awe, his wound had recovered once again. Riot ordered him to reveal who did this, asking if it was the hero he'd mentioned before. But Habayak denied it, saying it was the complete opposite. The hero had in fact saved his life. He claimed that if his master saw this man, he would surely approve, calling him the best candidate for the 7 deadly sins. On a beach within Chrono Life, a hunting ground for players level 30 and above, the shores were crawling with common slime monsters. However, the boss of this area was a threat on a whole other level. The level 85 Kraken. It possessed a hide so tough that even the sharpest blade could barely pierce it, and legs that dominated both land and sea. It was the terrifying result of unbalanced game design with an extremely ferocious personality. A notorious field boss, known for traumatizing new players. But at this very moment, it took a direct hit to the mouth from Ju, who used a skill that attacked without depleting the final hit point. The monster's massive HP bar stopped at exactly 1 point, and the colossal Kraken collapsed to the ground. Geo shouted for Captain Love to make her move. The girl instantly launched herself from the sand, soaring high into the air. After a breathtaking mid-air acrobatic, she unleashed her signature move, the Fallen Dragon Stomp, on the monster. Her attack crushed the beast, driving it deep into the ground. Geo was impressed, noting the final blow was perfect, and asked if she gained much experience. But the girl shook her head, disappointed. She had received almost nothing. Eurus explained it was because of the massive level difference between them, which completely prevented her from gaining experience. By the way, Ju asked, did your skill get stronger? It seemed much more powerful than last time. Sarang replied that it must be her new weapon. Ju remembered the gauntlets and realized that with them, Sarang could now hunt all by herself. But she pouted, reminding him that would mean leaving her briefs boy. She questioned why he'd even suggest it when being carried by him was so much better. They continued their playful chat as Luna watched from the sky, gracing them with her silent, beautiful presence. She recalled Jiu's cold rejection from the day before when she'd asked him to join her. Jiu had refused, flatly saying he didn't want to. He declared he would never play with her again after she backstabbed him the first time they met. Besides, he was already in a party with Sarang, and she would probably beat him up if he let another girl join. Watching the scene unfold, Luna saw the girl pull Jiu close, and a dark jealousy began to boil within her. It made her want to utterly ruin that girl's life. However, she turned away, deciding to let it go, for the time being. After all, Jiu was destined to be her man anyway, and for the sake of Chrono Life's grand ending, she would have to take that woman's life eventually. Eurus then advised that carrying her through the game wasn't a sustainable plan. Jiu complained that this problem kept surfacing, but the vast level difference made it impossible. Jiu asked for more details, and their serious conversation immediately caught Sarang's attention. Jiu wondered what he should do. There had to be another way. Sarang interrupted his thoughts, saying she'd been watching him talk to himself for a while now. She asked if someone else was with him. Startled, Geo asked if she couldn't see the little dragon, but Sarang was completely clueless. Eurus reminded his master that his presence was invisible to other people. Jiu remembered that was true. The dragon then explained that a solution did exist. His master would just need to share a small amount of mana to summon him into reality. "My stats are a disaster," Jiu protested. "My intelligence is rock bottom, and my mana is practically non-existent." But Uru simply smirked, assuring him it was more than enough. In that instant, an immense violet aura erupted from Jiu's body. The soul of Urus began to take shape within the swirling energy. Sarang watched mesmerized as the light converged into a single brilliant point. From the light emerged Urus in his tiny dragon form, letting out an impossibly adorable roar. The sight was too much for Sarang. A nosebleed erupted as she squealed, "He's so cute! Can I please pet him?" Eurus seethed with indignation. "How dare a mere mortal presume to touch me? Do you wish for eternal damnation?" But Jiu just waved it off, giving her the green light. Without a second's hesitation, Sarang scooped up the tiny, furious dragon in a massive hug. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the air. "At last, I found you." Jiu spun around to see Habek descending on his griffin. "Habek, what are you doing here?" he demanded. "Things have gotten complicated," Habek explained breathlessly. "I had to escape to find the hero." Geo narrowed his eyes. "How did you track me down?" Habek revealed he'd used one of the mirror's abilities. "The seventh vision exploration," he said. "It guides me to any opponent I've faced before." He urged them on. "There's no time to explain. A truly terrifying being is on its way. Right here, right now." But Geo cut him off, his eyes locked on Habek's arm. It was completely healed. Habek confirmed, "My master restored it." "But we have a far bigger problem now." Just then, an overwhelming pressure slammed down, making the very ground shake violently. "An earthquake?" Ju wondered aloud. Sarang felt the suffocating power too, as did Eurus, who was jolted from his cuddly bliss. With pure terror on his face, Habek announced, "He's here." It was his eternal master, the owner of the great throne, flanked by an army of angels. This was Riot, the disaster of sloth. "What is all that?" Sarang stammered. "Is that a soldier in angelic armor?" But Ju's mind raced, recalling everything he'd heard about this particular disaster. He expected the great merchant Riot to be a human-like monster, just like Habek. He couldn't comprehend. Why was he so unbelievably massive? On his griffin, Habek flew towards his master. "My lord, I apologize." I was unable to explain the situation in full detail. Riot's voice boomed. "It matters not. I will descend myself and explain everything to them personally." Though terrified, Habek simply closed his eyes in acceptance. "I understand, my lord." The throne plummeted downwards at an incredible speed, crashing onto the sandy beach with the force of a meteor. The shockwave sent both Jiu and Sarang flying. Riot's voice echoed, "A pleasure to finally meet you. Habek has told me so much. You must be the current hero." A cold sweat ran down Ju's back. Was this colossal being truly the disaster of sloth, meanwhile deep in a forest? Luna calmly approached the entrance to an ancient ruin. She moved with purpose, a clear plan already in motion. "So this is the place," she whispered. "I've finally found it." And there he was seated on a throne of stone. Before her sat the man once considered the strongest being alive. The very first hero, Lord Yopei. Luna smirked to herself. The description matches the game files perfectly. A legendary hero, obsolete yet so familiar. Suddenly, the ancient mark on Yopei's forehead began to pulse with a strange, powerful light. "I was hoping for this," Luna said, completely unfazed as she aimed her scepter at him. "Honestly, whoever wrote this game's story went for the most childish cliché plot imaginable. But I guess that's part of its charm." Her scepter began to crackle with magical energy, pointed directly at the legendary hero. Back on the island, Ju could only stare at Riot, his mind racing to process the situation. This was sloth, one of the 7 deadly sins. He commanded the most powerful tribe of angels and was known as the Great Merchant in Chrono Life. His overwhelming presence was fitting for such an enormous throne, towering several meters high, and crafted from solid gold. But for all that majesty, his actual appearance was that of a small child, leaving Ju and Sarang utterly stunned. Urus scoffed. That little brat, he still has the same arrogant aura after all this time. With a flick of his power, Riot floated effortlessly from his throne, gliding towards the main character. I am Riot the Sloth, and you're the hero Habak was talking about, yes? Ju cautiously replied. I suppose I am. Something about this child's presence felt incredibly dangerous. Riot let out a derisive sigh. To think a weakling like you is called a hero? The quality of humans has really plummeted. Before Ju could even ask what he meant, an explosive kick slammed into his face. Sarang couldn't even process his speed. Riot spun in midair, delivering another powerful kick to the other side of Ju's head. With terrifying ease, he sent the hero rocketing into a cliffside, causing a massive impact. Habak screamed in protest. Lord Riot, what are you doing? He's the hero. He helped us. But Riot shot him a deadly glare. Silence. If I wanted to talk, I wouldn't have bothered coming here. Our kind and humans are eternal enemies. I cannot believe you foolishly allied with them. Do you have any concept of the mistake you've made? A voice came from the rubble. Gio emerged, brushing dust from his shoulders. You know, on that point, he's absolutely right. The little lord seems to understand. A player and a monster can never be allies. So don't you move a muscle. Since you attacked first, there's no penalty for me to strike back, right? Riot's eyes blazed with fury. Don't get cocky, human. You threw the first punch, Riot declared. A baffled Gio retorted, when did I ever lay a hand on you? In response, Riot stomped his foot, unleashing a devastating shockwave. Urus, the sin of pride. His death at your hands shattered this world's destiny. With that, he launched a colossal boulder straight at the protagonist. And you're only complaining about that now. Ju scoffed casually, swatting the projectile away with his staff, and triggering another massive explosion. Urus was the absolute peak of Chrono Life, Riot roared, driving a brutal kick into Ju's stomach. He was meant to be the final raid boss of the main story, but you killed him and threw everything into chaos. Urakan of Gluttony was never supposed to be absorbed like that either. Those beings were fated to be defeated 10 years from now. Sarang tried to step in. Urakan attacked first, he saved me. But Riot just screamed for her to be silent. The girl flinched back, terrified. The deadly sin sneered, How dare you interrupt me? I never gave you permission to speak. A crushing pressure slammed her to her knees. What kind of power was this inside a game? It was a terror she'd never felt, not even from Urakan. As the dust settled, Riot stared down his opponent, noticing something had changed. Their eyes locked across the battlefield. A silent war waged in their gaze. Riot explained that Urakan's emergence was a direct result of Urus's fall, making Ju the one to blame. And the catastrophe you started is about to erupt. The strongest human in Chrono Life's history, the First Hero Yopei, is about to be resurrected. In a dark crypt, Yopei's skeleton stirs. Its eyes snap open, blazing with a potent aura, the exact same color as Luna's. A wicked smile crept across Luna's face. I know it's not yet your time to awaken, she whispered. That's why I've come to share my power. The skeletal hands began to regenerate. Flesh and sinew wrapped around the bone, forming anew beneath an ancient gauntlet. Yopei rose from his throne, unleashing an overwhelming torrent of energy. Gio demanded, so what if he's resurrected? He's a hero, isn't he? He should be on our side. His return shouldn't be a problem. Riot sighed, utterly annoyed. You're even more clueless than I imagined. You should have pieced it together by now. He will not be reborn as a human, but as one of the 7 deadly sins. His new purpose is annihilation, and vengeance against the humans who so vilely betrayed him. The temple floor began to tremble as a skeletal hand burst from the earth. A skeleton warrior clawed its way free. It was the first soldier of an undead legion marching from the temple's maw. Yopei's sinister energy radiated outwards, a dark beacon visible from every corner of Chrono Life. Luna explained that the hero who once loved humanity now burned with hatred for them after his death. A truly pathetic story, and the perfect origin for his sin. A gigantic skeletal dragon joined the unholy army. Yopei's voice boomed, I was the first hero, and now I am the sin of wrath. A flashback to an ancient time, the continent of Chrono. It was a blessed land free of war and conflict, a paradise of peace. But one day demons appeared. They began to slaughter humans, sowing chaos and despair across the world. In an instant, the continent of Chrono was transformed into a living hell. From that despair, a single light of hope emerged. They called him the First Hero Yopei. But in the present, Ju simply skipped the cutscene. What did you just do? Riot demanded. Pressed the skip button, Ju said, bored. I don't waste time reading the game's lore. So basically, a dark hero is being resurrected. That was all Gio needed to hear. He'd taken a beating just for that little speech. He stared Riot down. By the way, that Urus you worship, I killed him in a single blow. Strongest human or first hero, it makes no difference. I have no reason to be afraid of any of you. Riot sneered. You truly are a bigger fool than I thought. How could a mere human be so arrogant as to not know fear?
The first hero and his army will overwhelm you all. With that final threat, she turned to depart.
Where do you think you're going? Ju called out.
Weren't you here for a fight? Riot replied dismissively. This is no longer amusing.
I was merely curious about the current hero.
But I've concluded you are nothing special.
I once fought alongside the hero Yopei, she declared. He is the only human I acknowledge as worthy. You could never and will never defeat him. The protagonist let out a smirk. Thanks, now I have even more motivation to beat him to a bloody pulp. However, Riot was gravely mistaken if she thought she could just attack him and walk away scot-free. Habak rushed to intervene. Hero, please calm yourself, Ju snarled. Get out of my way unless you want to follow your master to hell, Habak pleaded again. Hero, please, there is no need for this. The conversation is over. The conversation isn't over, the protagonist retorted. My jaw still hurts from that cheap shot. Now it's my turn.
Habaj tried to rein in their shock, revealing the fortune Ju had amassed selling powerful items. Stunned, Ju demanded to know how he knew.
The King of Mirrors declared that his master revealed the buyer of the 15 billion gold haul, the legendary Riot himself. Meanwhile, within Yi's grand army, the resurrected hero stood beside the enigmatic Luna. With grim understanding, Yi acknowledged the state of the world. So many years had passed since his soul departed the mortal realm. Luna confirmed it, explaining his return was meant for a distant future, but history's timeline was already broken. So she granted him the immense power needed for his revival, telling him to cast aside all worries. Yi thanked her deeply, vowing to repay this debt if fate allowed. But Luna simply asked, "And where will you go now?" The first hero smirked the answer obvious. He addressed her by her true name. Lust, one of the 7 deadly sins. His draconic wings tore the sky asunder, unleashing a world-shaking roar. The beast soared towards the mountains, gathering a torrent of absolute destruction in its jaws. Below the skeleton, legions scattered in terror. With cold fury, Yi declared he would personally annihilate the very world he once bled to protect. He then vanished in a flash of teleportation magic. Luna was left alone watching the lingering smoke of his departure.
A heavy sigh escaped her lips. My work here is done. She thought, a bitter taste filling her words. Was this truly for the best? Did a part of her regret this path?
With Uriken, her actions were born from desire. But this felt entirely different. She had only intervened because he was a dangerous loose thread in the grand tapestry of the main story. A divine voice answered from the cosmos. It is fine, simply enjoy the show, as they gazed down upon the world from an infinite distance.